There's a quiet that settles over the neighborhood at night, the kind that wraps around you like a favorite blanket. I love those moments when everything slows down, the world tucking in for sleep, the only sounds being the soft rustle of leaves or the distant hum of a car passing by. I often find myself sitting on my porch, a warm mug of tea cradled in my hands, watching the streetlights flicker to life against the dusky sky. I live in a cozy little town, one of those places where everyone knows each other, and the rhythm of life feels predictable and safe. My neighbors are a patchwork of personalities. There's Mrs. Rodriguez, who bakes the best key lime pie, and the Johnsons, who always throw the wildest Halloween parties. Then there's Sarah, a single mom with two spirited kids, Lucas and Sophie. While I admire her tenacity, I can't deny that life with them has become a whirlwind of chaos more often than not. I met Sarah a couple of years ago during one of those spontaneous neighborhood get-togethers. She shared stories that would have me laughing until my sides hurt, her words spilling out like dance notes. But beneath that vibrant exterior, I could sense an undercurrent of exhaustion. We bonded quickly, over coffee, over shared frustrations about work, and our mutual love for rainy days. But as our friendship deepened, so did Sarah's requests. "Could you watch the kids just this once?" she'd say, her eyes wide with hope. And of course, I couldn't refuse. Who could say no to those eager little faces eager for adventure? I still remember the way Lucas would bounce with excitement, while a little Sophie tugged at my shirt, shy but curious. Yet recently, I've found myself in a delicate place. It's not that I don't adore those kids, or the joy they bring. It's just that I've begun to feel like a last-minute solution in a series of overwhelming challenges she faces alone. And despite my affection for this little family, there are lines I need to draw to protect my own peace. Tonight, she asked again, and for the first time, I said no. As I sipped my tea, the warmth felt oddly hollow against the cool night air, the weight of that simple word hanging between us like a fragile thread. As I sat at my kitchen table, the rhythmic sound of the clock ticking filled the quiet space, creating a gentle backdrop to an otherwise ordinary evening. The sun was just beginning to dip below the horizon, casting soft hues of orange and pink through the window. I wrapped my fingers around the warm mug, savoring the rich aroma of chamomile tea, a familiar comfort. It was one of those rare moments where everything felt just right, or so I thought. My phone chimed, slicing through the peaceful silence, and my heart gave a little lurch when I saw her name pop up on the screen. Sarah. We had been friends for years, and I had watched her kids grow from tiny, wobbly toddlers into lively little beings filled with curiosity and laughter. I smiled at the memory of last Saturday, where we spent the afternoon at the park, Lucas climbing trees while Sophie tried, with her whole heart, to catch butterflies. Such beautiful moments flooded back, and they were followed by that familiar pang of guilt that had been creeping in lately. The message was concise, as they always were. "Hey! Could you watch the kids for a few hours tomorrow? I've got errands to run, and I really need the help." My heart sank just a little. It wasn't the request itself, it was everything behind it, the unspoken weight of obligation that hung in the air like thick fog. This wasn't the first time she'd asked, and considering her overwhelming schedule, it likely wouldn't be the last. Just the other day, she had mentioned some challenges she was facing with work and her personal life. I wanted to support her, to be there for her, but somehow, in the midst of it all, I had begun to lose my own boundaries. With an almost instinctive reaction, I felt my fingers tightening around the mug. My mind raced with memories of me scrambling to fit her needs into my own ever-busy schedule, the juggling act that had become my life. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, imagining my own to-do list piling up while I watched the kids play, and the bittersweet realization washed over me. I had become their go-to, but at the expense of my own peace. Taking a deep breath, I typed a reply. "Hi Sarah, I'd love to help, but I have a few things I need to take care of myself tomorrow. Can we plan another time?" I hesitated before pressing send, a lump forming in my throat. This was the moment I'd been dreading, a turning point that felt as though I was stepping off a ledge. Was I being selfish? But as I hit send, I felt a flicker of relief mixed with the weight of what I had just denied, to say no to someone I cared for deeply. The response came almost instantly, and when I read it, "Oh, okay. I understand. Maybe next time?" I sensed the disappointment that lingered in her words, a quilt of emotions stitched with frustration and gratitude. It was then that I recognized the delicate balance we were walking. In that moment, I understood, saying no wasn't just an act of putting myself first, it was also an acknowledgement of her challenges and a subtle send-off for the hope that she could find other ways to navigate the storm alone. But still, as the words faded into the night, I couldn't shake the heaviness of that decision. Days turned into weeks, and the air shifted in our friendship, subtle yet perceptible. I could feel the lingering specter of my refusal weaving through our interactions. Each time we met, I noticed the way her smile faltered, just a fraction, when our eyes met. It was as if a delicate thread had been pulled taut between us, straining under the weight of unspoken words. At first, I told myself it was fine, she would find someone else to help her out like I had in the past, and our bond would settle back into its cozy rhythm. But as the days wore on, that comforting belief felt more like denial. I often replayed her response in my mind. "Oh, okay. I understand." Did she really, though? Or was she merely saying what she thought I wanted to hear? On the mornings when I'd prepare coffee, the steam curling into the crisp air sounded too much like a sigh. I often found myself staring out the window, the world bustling with life while I sat in stillness, lost in thought. Occasionally, I'd catch myself smiling as a child's laughter rolled through the air from her yard next door, but it was quickly followed by an ache in my chest, a longing for connection, for the ease we once shared. I made an effort to reach out over text, a casual "how's your week?" or a "thinking of you." But even those felt oddly stilted. Hearing the faint clatter of toys and the charming chaos of her kids through the open windows reminded me of the countless afternoons I had spent with them in carefree laughter. I loved those moments, but now they felt bittersweet, as if someone had mixed joy with a hint of sorrow, leaving a strange aftertaste. Then one evening, as I was flipping through a photo album, those moments captured in laughter and innocence, a wave of nostalgia washed over me. The memories echoed laughter, little hands grasping at my own, sweet faces gazing up at me with unconditional love. It made the ache expand, and I found myself wrapped in sadness, recognizing how much I missed not only the children but the essence of our friendship that felt each day a little more frayed. I tried not to dwell on it. I promised myself that I wouldn't let it consume me. I took evening walks, looking at the stars that seemed so familiar, but it didn't take long for them to remind me of her. Every aspect of my life began to mirror the situation. Friends would talk about their kids, and I'd nod along, emotions dancing just beneath the surface, swirling in a cocktail of guilt and empathy. The sensation almost felt like I was holding my breath, waiting for something to shift or happen instead of just being in the moment. Eventually, we found ourselves at a small gathering, where laughter wafted through the warm air like sweet perfume. I noticed her standing across the patio, an aura of fragility surrounding her, surrounded by our mutual friends. When she caught my eye, her expression was a soft mask of stillness, like she was waiting for a cue from me. My heart thudded painfully in response. I pushed through the crowd, a gentle resolve hardening within me. As I approached, her smile blossomed, and for an instant, I felt the heaviness lift. Yet, even as we exchanged pleasantries, I sensed the walls that had sprung up since the day I had said no. The easy banter was replaced by silence that swallowed our words, turning our once comfortable conversations into whispered exchanges that echoed with uncertainty. "Want to come over for dinner next week?" I ventured, hoping to bridge the gap with familiar warmth. "Sure," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper, but the way she hesitated told me everything. It was a small step, but I knew I had planted the seed of reconciliation. In that moment, I realized my heart was still tied to her, bound not just by the warmth of shared memories or laughter, but by the understanding that friendships ebb and flow, and sometimes it takes a gentle river to reshape the landscape of our connection. I took a deep breath, my resolve steadying. The journey back together would be slow, but with time, I held on to the belief that we could find our way back to one another. Reflection: as I sat in the quiet of my own space, the dust of the day settling around me, I found my mind wandering back to that phone call. The weight of saying no felt heavy in my chest at first. It was easier to just say yes, to slip into the familiar role of being the go-to person for favors, for late-night babysitting that blurred the lines of expectation. But this time, I didn't. Instead, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't recognized in a while: self-respect. It's funny how a single moment can spur such clarity. For so long, I had convinced myself it was generous to stretch myself thin for the sake of friendship, to shoulder the responsibilities that weren't mine. I viewed these acts as kindness, a way of proving my worth. But in saying no, I finally understood that kindness also means drawing the line, knowing when to protect my own emotional resources. Slowly, I started to see pieces of myself I had overlooked. I'm the one who needs nurturing too, who deserves to have my needs acknowledged. There's a delicate balance in friendships, and recognizing that has made me feel lighter, empowered even. I began reflecting on the time I would have poured into those weekends of babysitting, the moments I could have devoted to what truly fills me up. Baking at home, curling up with a good book, or simply taking a stroll with the trees whispering their secrets to me. Now, I realize that those small joys are just as important as being there for someone else. Every individual has their own unraveling stories, their own struggles, and it's natural to lend a hand. But I've learned it's about finding equilibrium, supporting others without losing myself in the process. It makes me appreciate those who reciprocate the same energy, the laughter that comes effortlessly, the way that connection feels like a beautiful tapestry being woven together, not a strain on my well-being. Over the next few days, as our dinner approaches, there's a warmth inside me that swells with hope. Maybe we can talk about our needs, our boundaries, and find a way to support each other in a healthier way. Who knows? Perhaps this journey toward understanding our evolving friendship is the very beginning of building something even deeper and more abiding. And as I lay down, the gentle embrace of night wrapping around me, I welcome the space to grow. After all, sometimes saying no can be a beautiful yes to yourself. The night of the dinner arrived, and I found myself nestled into the cozy corner of a little Italian restaurant, candlelight flickering softly against the walls. My heart fluttered with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. I still thought about her request, how she asked me to watch her kids again, that familiar tone of desperation lacing her voice, as if her world would crumble without my willing hands to hold it up. When she walked in, her smile was bright, but something in her eyes hinted at weariness. As we settled into our conversation, I felt every moment stretch into an ocean of reflection. We laughed over shared memories, those joyful, chaotic moments we had cherished together, and I relished in the warmth of it all. Yet, as we dined, I could also feel the weight of unspoken words resting heavily between us. There came a moment, a quiet pause in the laughter, where she looked at me earnestly. The question hung in the air, as heavy as a summer storm, and I took a breath that felt like it could reach deep into my soul. I thought about the shifts in our friendship, the growing imbalance that had become impossible to ignore. I wasn't just tired, I was worn thin. But in that instant, clarity washed over me. I realized I didn't have to bear the weight of her challenges alone. I had already been on that path, and while I wanted to support her, I craved a balance that honored my own needs too. It was then that I felt a surge of strength building within, a whisper of self-respect nudging me forward. So, I smiled softly, locking eyes with her. "You know, I think we really need to talk about this. Because while I care for you and your kids, I need to be honest about how I'm feeling." As the words escaped my lips, the gentle release of pent-up emotion felt like a cool breeze breezing through a stuffy room. I wasn't dismissing her, I was setting a boundary, and it felt refreshing. There was a subtle power in the simplicity of that moment. I could see the surprise and then the understanding wash over her face, and for the first time, I felt a true connection, a mutual respect that had been yearning to break free. In that shared silence that stretched on, I sensed a turning point. There was the release of tension, as if we both recognized that this was not the end of our friendship, but perhaps the very beginning of a new chapter. No longer caught in the cycle of unreciprocated effort, we had opened the door to honest dialogue and deeper understanding. As I leaned back in my chair, the warmth of the candlelight reflecting not just on the walls, but also in my heart, I felt lighter. I had given myself permission to say no, and in that no, I had discovered a resounding yes to my own needs. A breath of fresh air swept through, and with it came a beautiful sense of possibility. I knew this was just the beginning, a gentle promise of growth for both of us, and I couldn't wait to see what unfolded next. Outcome in the weeks that followed our heartfelt conversation, a gentle shift began to blossom between us. At first, there was a moment of awkwardness, a hesitation that lingered in the air whenever we met. But with each interaction, we slowly peeled away the layers of misunderstanding. It was as if we were both crafting a new language of respect and consideration, a melody built on the harmony of open communication. She started by asking how I was doing. It seemed simple, but it showed me her genuine intent to reconnect on a deeper level. Instead of diving straight into requests or expectations, she shared stories of her kids, of the little joys that brightened her days. It felt refreshing, and I realized just how much I had missed these conversations, pure and unclouded by demands. I began to offer what I could, an afternoon of my time here and there, with the understanding that it wasn't a chore, but a gift. I found myself rearranging my schedule not out of obligation, but from a place of choice. When her laughter filled my home, weaving through the rooms like a warm breeze, I listened closely, soaking in the sound, feeling the joy of companionship return. One evening, after an afternoon filled with play and stories, I made us both a cup of tea. As we sat on my porch, enveloped in the golden hues of the setting sun, she turned to me and smiled, a genuine smile that spoke volumes. "Thank you for being honest," she said softly. I didn't realize how much I needed to hear that. It was in that moment that I understood the profound effect of boundaries not just on me, but on her as well. Those little changes in our dynamic transformed what could have been a rift into an avenue for growth, where I could stand firm in my needs, and she found space to recalibrate her expectations. Our friendship evolved into something richer, infused with gratitude and mutual support. We had both taken those first, sometimes scary steps towards honesty, which were now grounding us in a beautiful and balanced place. The tension that once resided in our exchanges was replaced by a newfound respect, a gentle understanding that we were equals in this dance of life, neither of us needing to sacrifice too much at the altar of friendship. And so, as I settled into my evening routine, I took a moment to reflect. The flicker of the candle on my desk mirrored the warmth in my heart, a flame not just kindled by my choice to assert my boundaries but also fanned by the trust that was igniting between us. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, knowing that in claiming my truth, I had set the stage for deeper connections, not just with her, but with myself as well. The balance we found felt like a promise whispered on the breeze, filled with potential and comfort as tranquil as the night itself. As I turned off the lights and snuggled under the covers, I realized that sometimes saying no opens the door to truer connections. Just like in life, it's in these moments of gentle assertiveness that we create space for love to grow, both for others and for ourselves. In the delicate dance of boundaries, we find harmony, steady and serene, just like the quiet of the night. I remember the quiet hum of the evening, the way the warm glow of the kitchen lights made the walls feel like they were wrapping around me in a gentle embrace. The smell of freshly brewed chamomile tea danced in the air, mingling with the soft scent of vanilla from the candle flickering on the counter. It was the kind of night where the world felt still, as if time was holding its breath, urging me to reflect on the twists and turns that had brought me here. I'm Alex, a 29-year-old who spent the past 5 years entrenched in a corporate job that started as a promising opportunity and slowly morphed into a daily grind. My days blurred together, a monotonous cycle of deadlines and meetings that never quite filled the void in my chest. Surrounded by enthusiastic colleagues who seemed to thrive in the chaos, I often felt like a shadow, fading into the background, no longer sure of my place in this buzzing environment. Then there was my family. They always carried a sense of warmth and togetherness, the kind that filled our modest home with laughter and the sound of clattering dishes, a cacophony of love during our dinner gatherings. My parents, filled with their own ambitions and hopes for me, envisioned a stable future where I climbed the corporate ladder, fancy title, secure salary, the works. And my sister, the free spirit, always reminding me to chase my heart, watching me with a mixture of concern and encouragement from her own colorful life as an artist. Now, as I sit here in this soft light, reflecting on my impulsive decision to quit my job without notice, I can feel the weight of their expectations pressing down like a heavy quilt. I can still hear the brief silence that followed my abrupt resignation, the shock waves that rippled through my team, and the questions that blurred into the distance as I walked out of that office for the last time. I know my decision has reverberated beyond just me. My family, loving yet anxious, met my announcement with expressions that flickered between disbelief and worry. And I sit here in my comfort zone, my cup of tea warming my palms, contemplating the paths I've chosen and the ones yet to come. As the clock inches closer to midnight, I can't help but wonder, did I make the right choice? It started with a normal Tuesday morning, a day like any other. The sun peeked through my studio windows, casting a gentle glow on my cluttered work table, where half-finished canvases stood like soldiers awaiting orders. I had planned to get lost in my art, as I often did, a delightful escape from the monotonous routine I'd become wrapped in. But on this particular morning, something felt different. I sat at my desk, attempting to focus on the strokes of cobalt blue I desperately wanted to blend into my latest piece. My mind was racing, thoughts skittering like leaves chased by the wind. I could hear the hum of my phone buzzing endlessly next to me, trying to pull me back into the world I was so tired of. Messages from work, reminders of looming deadlines, requests for conference calls, each one felt like a little piece of my spirit being chipped away. I was drowning in expectations, a sea of urgent tasks that overshadowed my passion. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I spotted a little framed quote my grandmother had given me long ago: "Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life." Those words resonated within me, echoing in the silence of my studio. I felt a flicker of rebellious spirit ignite deep in my chest. What if I just didn't? What if I stepped away from this sea of should-haves and must-dos? With my heart pounding like a drum in my ears, I grabbed my phone and scrolled to my boss's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button, trembling with anticipation. Would I regret this? Was I ready for the fallout? The questions cascaded through my mind, but in that moment, a quiet voice whispered that I had to try. I was tired, and the thought of continuing on this path made me feel like I was suffocating. So, before I could second-guess myself, I hit send on that resignation email. I typed those words with shaky fingers, feeling each keystroke release a bit of the anxiety I carried. Effective immediately. I paused for just a beat before hitting send, feeling as if I was leaping into an abyss. When I finally hit that button, reality crashed in. I felt light as a feather and heavy as stone all at once. Adrenaline coursed through me as I stepped outside, the air crisp and bright, the world somehow appeared more vivid, more alive. And then, as the weight of my decision began to settle, I realized this wasn't just about me. It would ripple through my family too. Their hopes and plans for my practical career were tied to this decision in ways I had only begun to grasp. That evening, over dinner, the mood took a turn. When I finally shared my decision, my father's fork clattered against his plate. My mom's hand flew to her mouth, a gasp caught in her throat. I could see the worry unfolding on their faces, their love mingling with disbelief. It was as if I had thrown a rock into a still pond, and the waves were crashing against the calm of our family dynamics. In that moment, I felt a mixture of liberation and sorrow. What had I done? Their concern was evident, and even though my heart soared with the thrill of pursuit, I could sense the heaviness that had settled over the table. I had broken the unspoken pact of stability and expectations, and the realization of what that might mean for all of us was about to unfold. The days that followed my impulsive decision were a strange ebb and flow of tranquility and tension, like the gentle rise and fall of the tide. In the mornings, I would wake up to the soft light filtering through my curtains, a soothing reminder that today was mine to shape. For a moment, I felt weightless, floating in the freedom of my choice. I could set my own rhythm, decide how to fill the hours of my day. It was exhilarating, yet it gnawed at me with a persistent whisper of uncertainty. But then, by midday, the reality began to seep in. The excitement that churned in my belly each morning gradually morphed into a knot of dread and guilt. I'd sit at the kitchen table, a tranquil ocean of sunlight streaming in, yet I felt like I was floundering in stormy waters. My parents would glance my way, their eyes searching mine for a hint of confidence. They'd ask about my plans, and I could sense the underlying fear behind their questions. "Have you updated your resume? Or do you have a backup plan?" echoed like a drumbeat in my head. Each time I answered with vague optimism, I could feel the distance between my hopes and their fears stretching like a taut string, ready to snap. I found myself withdrawing into the sanctuary of my thoughts more and more, grappling with the uncharted territory ahead. Instead of filling my days with tangible tasks like I had envisioned, I became embroiled in the swirl of what-ifs. What if I couldn't find a job that made me feel alive? What if my parents were right, and I had just thrown away my future for a fleeting whim? In the evenings, the quiet would settle over the house like a blanket, heavy with my family's quiet discontent. I'd notice my mom linger a bit longer near the kitchen sink, her back turned to me, wiping dishes with deliberate care. My father would retreat into the news, his brows knitted, perhaps searching for assurance in headlines that offered none. The air crackled with unspoken words, fragile emotions swirling around us, and I felt like a ghost in my own home. At times, I would catch a glimpse of their worried faces reflected in the window's glass, each line etched deeper with unspoken concern as they glanced at me. I wished I could reassure them, to let them know that my heart was set on building something genuine. But every time I opened my mouth, the words tangled in my throat like stubborn vines. Late one night, after my parents had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room, wrapped in a thick blanket. The moonlight poured through the window, illuminating the edges of the book I had cracked open, its comforting narrative a welcome escape from the storm of my thoughts. I leaned back on the couch, feeling the weight of the evening settle on my chest. In the stillness, I breathed deeply, trying to align my heartbeat with the rhythm of this new path I had chosen. Was this uncertainty truly a life-altering mistake? Or was it simply the first step into a life that felt more authentically mine? With each breath, I tried to tether myself to the belief that sometimes, good things take time to bloom. I closed my eyes, allowing myself to dream of what could be, the flicker of hope igniting a quiet resilience within me once again. As I surrendered to the embrace of sleep, I could almost believe that everything would be okay. Perhaps in the quiet, subtle unraveling of my life, both my dreams and my family's love could exist in harmony. I wanted to believe that this was merely the beginning of a new, beautiful story, one filled with twists and turns that could lead me back to the heart of what truly mattered. As I lay there, the weight of my decision began to settle in a different way. A gentle wave of awareness crested and softly ebbed, offering me glimmers of clarity that had previously been shrouded in confusion. I thought back to the frantic cycle of meetings and deadlines that once consumed me, a never-ending marathon where the finish line never felt real. I had poured so much of myself into that job, often at the expense of my own well-being and even my relationships. In all honesty, I had been caught in a spiral, where the comfort of a steady paycheck masked the growing discontent in my soul. I was so busy trying to secure my future that I neglected the present, where my true life was happening all around me. Now, having walked away without notice, I began to realize this wasn't just an impulsive act of rebellion but rather a crucial alignment with who I wanted to be. I had intuitively known that if I didn't take this leap, I might always wonder what if. I was tired of viewing life through a lens of obligation. I wanted to step into the light of my potential, to embrace the uncertainty as part of the adventure, perhaps even the exhilarating part. With this new perspective, my family's disappointment felt less like rejection and more like a reflection of their own fears. They worried about stability, they loved me fiercely and wanted to protect me. In that moment, I could see our shared humanity, their struggles, aspirations, and the weight of expectations they carried, not just for themselves but for me, too. So, while their frustration echoed around me like a gentle chorus of concern, I began to feel a strange sense of gratitude. Here lay an opportunity for dialogue, connection, a chance for us to navigate through this moment together, to reshape our understanding of success and happiness. Perhaps my choices would invite them to examine their own paths, sparking conversations that could deepen our bond instead of pulling us apart. As I reflected, I understood that life's unpredictability could be a beautiful tapestry woven from our choices, dreams, and the occasional misstep. I could choose to frame this ripple of uncertainty not as a failure but as an invitation to recalibrate my priorities and explore the world anew. No longer tied to a title but anchored by my courage and vulnerability, I felt a heartbeat reclaiming its rhythm, one that echoed the truth that I was learning to trust myself. Surrendering to that sleep-induced calm, I allowed the tension of the day to melt away. I realized I was not just seeking approval from my family or society, I was on a journey to embrace the most authentic version of myself. In the stillness of that moment, I understood that perhaps stepping into the unknown was not just about leaving something behind. It was about making space for something wonderful and entirely my own to take root. As I lay there, cocooned in my blanket, the hum of the world outside faded into a soothing backdrop. I focused on the gentle rise and fall of my breathing, the way my chest expanded as I inhaled, filling each corner of my being with warmth, and how it softly released as I exhaled, carrying away the weight of doubt and uncertainty. There, in that sanctuary of stillness, something inside me shifted. In the aftermath of that impulsive resignation, my mind ran amok. My family's disappointment echoed through my thoughts, their worried faces flashing like a flickering light. Yet, more vividly, there was another image forming, the vision of myself, unshackled from what I had always known. The thought was both exhilarating and unsettling. All those years, my identity was woven around a job title, responsibilities, and expectations that often felt like shackles. But now, I chose clarity. I wasn't running away from anything, I was stepping towards something profound. What if I was a canvas waiting to be painted anew, colors swirling with potential? Melodies of possibility danced through my mind, a longing for adventure, creativity, learning, and connection. I imagined how it might feel to wake up each day without that weight, embracing spontaneity. Perhaps I could dive into volunteering, or explore my love for writing that I had tucked away for too long, buried under emails and meetings. The rush of those thoughts was like the fresh breeze of spring, sweeping through a stuffy room. Joyful possibilities bloomed within me as confidence began to take root. In that moment of emotional clarity, I felt a soft whisper cradle my heart, a promise to myself. I vowed to honor my journey, whatever shape it might take. I imagined sharing my choices with my family, not as an invitation for acceptance but as an honest reflection of who I was becoming. For the first time, it felt liberating to think about filling my life with experiences that resonated with my soul, rather than the echoes of past expectations. And just like that, amidst the shadows of doubt, a gentle light emerged. I realized that while the path ahead might still be unclear, I was no longer alone. It was a journey uniquely mine, with each step unfolding a bit more of who I was meant to be. That realization felt like a deep breath in a world of chaos, a small yet profound shift inside me that sparked a flicker of hope and excitement. As I drifted into a well-deserved sleep, a serene smile played across my face. In that quiet assurance, I found peace, ready to embrace what lay ahead with open arms and an open heart. The outcome of my impulsive decision to quit my job without notice unfolded in ways I could never have anticipated. Initially, my family reacted with that familiar blend of disappointment and worry, voices raised in concern about financial stability and the unpredictability of life without a steady paycheck. There was a long, tense dinner where emotions were high, and words were sharper than intended. They were scared for me, and I understood their fears. But deep inside, a warmth spread through me, a sense of purpose that reaffirmed I was on the right path. As the days turned into weeks, I gave myself the time to breathe. I spent lazy mornings sipping coffee while watching the sunrise paint the world in hues of gold, casting soft light on my new reality. I sought out those small joys that had always been buried beneath the weight of deadlines and expectations. Slowly, the tension around the dinner table eased. Conversation shifted from disappointment to curiosity about my journey. I began to share my days, the workshops I attended, the people I met, the art I created. It was as if the very act of stepping away from routine ignited a spark not just within me, but within my family as well. As I immersed myself in what brought me joy, I began to realize that my happiness was contagious. My sister took up painting again, my brother explored photography, and even my parents started visiting local galleries, their laughter mingling with the clinks of coffee cups. The family dinners that had once been fraught with tension turned into a safe space for sharing dreams and the latest creative endeavors. The warmth of these moments felt like coming home to each other, revealing deeper layers of our relationships that had been overshadowed by the day-to-day grind. In time, the worries faded into discussions about the future, the dreams we held close. My family began to understand that it wasn't just about my job, or lack thereof, it was about me reclaiming the agency over my life. I remember one particular evening. We sat around the table, buzzing with excitement, plans merging our individual passions into something collaborative. A shared art project, perhaps. An open mic night with poetry and music, the ideas flowed, and so did the joy. Looking back, I realized that while my decision seemed brash at first, it opened the door to a richer, more fulfilling narrative, not just for me, but for all of us. The road hasn't been without its challenges, and I still face moments of doubt, but with every step forward, I feel anchored in a community that stands beside me, rooting for my happiness as if it were their own. We've learned together that it's okay to stray from the expected, to embrace the unknown, and to support one another on this remarkable journey of discovery. So here I am, at this serene crossroads of possibility, deeply aware that this path is mine alone, yet nice to walk with my family beside me. No matter what comes next, there's warmth in knowing that love thrives in shared journeys, the kind that glows softly in the silence of understanding, in the laughter that fills the spaces between us, and in every choice made toward living authentically. As I watch the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of hope and promise, I realize that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is step onto a path not yet traveled. It's in these moments of uncertainty where we find our true selves, surrounded by the voices of those who love us, reminding us that every choice can lead to a new kind of light. It was one of those quiet evenings, the kind where the world outside feels like it's paused, wrapped in layers of soft dusk. I curled up on my couch, the familiar scent of vanilla candles mingling with the faint saltiness of the sea breeze filtering through the open window. This has always been my own little sanctuary, a space filled with memories echoed in the laughter of friends who had come and gone, and the warmth of my cherished dog, Benny, who was the heartbeat of my home. Benny was a mix of golden retriever and some kind of wild spirit I like to think of as pure love. His fur caught the sunlight just right, and his goofy smile could light up even my darkest days. He was my best friend, always there to greet me when I came home from work, tail wagging in a rhythm that matched the fluttering beat of my heart. Life hadn't been easy lately, especially navigating the tightrope of responsibilities at my job and the slow unraveling of my closest relationships. Then there was my sister, Mia. We shared a bond that was both comforting and complicated. On some days, she was my confidant, the one who understood the weight of the world on my shoulders. But on others, she felt like a tempest, unpredictable and often, it seemed, out of touch with the importance of the small joys that brought me peace. Our relationship was like the tide, sometimes high and crashing, other times low and gentle. On that particular evening, as I kicked off my shoes and settled into the well-worn fabric of my couch, a sense of unease slipped around me like a fog. I had left Benny at home with Mia while I worked the long shift that had stretched into the night. As I reached for my phone to check in, I felt a ripple of dread, a premonition of something out of place. Little did I know that this night would unravel in ways I couldn't imagine, leading me to a truth that would forever shift the sands of my relationship with my sister. What I learned about love, loyalty, And the lengths we go to for family was about to take me on a journey I could never have predicted. As I scrolled through my messages, my mind drifted back to the morning routine I shared with Benny. The way his tail wagged fiercely when I poured his food, the little dance he did every time I reached for the leash, those snippets of joy were like warm sunlight peeking through clouds. But that warmth started to fade as I noticed a string of unopened texts from Mia. My brows furrowed in concern. Their presence felt weighty, as if each one was waiting to unravel something hidden beneath the surface. With the dim light of the living room casting soft shadows around me, I flipped open her messages. The first few were casual enough, detailing her day and asking how mine was going. But then, my heart sank at the abrupt shift in tone. Benny's been a bit restless today. I took him out a few times, but he seems bored. Maybe you should get him a friend. Those words churned my stomach, like a fork scraping against a plate. I quickly typed back, reassuring her that I'm on my way home, my mind racing with thoughts of what might have led to her sentiment. Was he misbehaving? Did he bark too loudly for her comfort? My fingers trembled a little as I sent the message, hoping she wouldn't worry too much. But as I pulled into the driveway, the anxiety tightened into a knot. There was something about the way she'd suggested a friend that lingered, gnawing at my intuition. Entering the house, I was greeted by an unusual silence that seemed to echo too loudly against the walls. Normally, I would be swamped by Benny's excited barks and scuffles, but tonight felt different. "Mia?" I called out, my voice uncertain. The house felt strangely empty, and the air was thick with tension. As I walked toward the living room, I spotted Mia sitting on the couch, her phone cradled in her hands. She looked up at me, her eyes flashing with something I couldn't quite place, a mix of guilt and apprehension, perhaps? That was the moment, the shift that turned my world on its head. The moment my heart began to race as I noticed the absence of Benny's bright eyes staring back at me. It was as if the calm before a storm had settled in, and in that small, heart-stopping second, I began to understand there might be more to a casual text than I had ever imagined. Little did I know, the unfolding mystery would lead me to question everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and the very fabric of my family. As I stood there, the realization began to seep in like a slow, unrelenting tide. Benny was gone. My heart thudded painfully against my ribcage, and I took a moment to catch my breath. It wasn't just the absence of his wagging tail and playful bark, it was the absence of the warmth he brought into every corner of our home. I could almost feel the walls closing in, the laughter and joy we shared slipping away with him. "Mia," I began, my voice barely a whisper. It felt fragile, as if any harder or louder could shatter my composure completely. "Where's Benny?" Her demeanor shifted, the guilt I had sensed earlier glinting like a knife edge in her eyes. He needed a new home, you know?" She glanced away, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her shirt, avoiding eye contact like a small child caught in a lie. A knot twisted in my stomach. What kind of justification was that? I hadn't been given the chance to discuss it, to process it. I could feel the emotional chasm yawning open between us, each moment thickening the air with unspoken words and buried feelings. "How could you do this without telling me?" I managed, my tone mixing confusion with a simmering hurt. "I thought it was for the best." She shot back, her voice tinged with a defensiveness that felt all too familiar. "For the best?" I felt anger curling within me, but strangely it only burned briefly before all that remained was a dull ache. Wasn't every decision about Benny supposed to involve me? We raised him together, shared countless walks in the park, bedtime cuddles, and quiet mornings filled with his gentle snores. With each beat of silence, the emptiness of the house mirrored the emptiness in my heart, and my mind raced with the memory of his soft fur brushing against my leg, the way he would nuzzle into my hand during sad movies. Days passed, the weeks blurred into one another, and Benny's absence gnawed at the edges of my daily life. My morning routine lost its sweetness. I would awaken to a stillness that felt unnatural, the space next to my bed unfilled, and my usual cup of coffee tasted like bitterness. I wandered around the house aimlessly, peering into corners where his toys used to lay, finding only dusty reminders of what once was. Work seemed to become this monotonous blur, tasks blending into each other without ever truly capturing my attention. Colleagues reached out with invitations for lunch or after-work drinks, but I often found excuses to decline. It felt as if I was wearing a mask of normalcy, smiling and engaging while inside, there was an ever-growing vacancy where Benny's spirit had filled my heart. "Mia, I can't do this," I would find myself saying to her one afternoon, exhaling the words with a heaviness that seemed to carry years' worth of unshed tears. She looked up, momentarily taken aback by the quiet depth of my voice, And I could see her processing what my heart had long been begging me to express. "You should have talked to me. We should have talked." "I know," she finally admitted, her voice small and remorseful. That admission opened a small window of understanding between us. Still, I could feel the walls we had both unwittingly built, separating us, deepening the chasm. Sitting in the fading afternoon light, I began to realize I wasn't just grieving Benny. I was unsettled by the shift in my sister, how easily she dismissed my feelings, rejected the bond we had over a puppy that was more than just an animal to us, he was family. I questioned the fabric of our relationship. How could someone so close wield such a decision without a flicker of doubt? But I knew I needed to process these emotions carefully. I found comfort in journaling, pouring my heart onto pages that became a refuge for my swirling thoughts. I began to articulate my sadness and confusion, tracing memories of Benny and unearthing emotions I didn't even know I needed to confront. Slowly, it became less about blame and more about understanding, about piecing together the fractures in both our hearts. As I sat there at my writing desk one night, an unexpected wave of serenity washed over me. In the quiet of my thoughts, I realized that healing isn't a straight line. It comes in waves, ebbing and flowing. In those moments, I held space for my sadness and acknowledged Mia's, too. Suddenly, I felt the golden light of hope flickering on the horizon. Maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back, not only for Benny but for each other. I sat there, pen poised between my fingers, allowing myself to truly feel the weight of everything that had happened. It's funny how life can shift your perspective in the blink of an eye. Just weeks ago, I was consumed by anger and betrayal, unable to see past my own hurt. But as the candle flickered softly beside me, I began to sift through the layers of my emotions. A deeper understanding began to take shape, wrapping around me like a warm blanket on a chilly night. In my moments of quiet reflection, I found myself thinking about Mia. Sure, she had crossed a line. Selling Benny wasn't just a mistake, it was a heart-wrenching choice steeped in whatever pain she was experiencing. I had filled the pages of my journal with my feelings about the betrayal, but what about her? What about the battles she was fighting, the insecurities she might have felt? In my preoccupation with my own sorrow, I had forgotten that she, too, was struggling beneath the weight of challenges I could only begin to imagine. It was as if a door had nudged open, allowing light to spill into the dark corners of my mind where resentment had taken root. Maybe the urgency of my pain had blinded me to her humanity. I realized that love and empathy often weave through even the deepest misunderstandings. I no longer wanted to be just her brother, marooned and hurt. I wanted to be her anchor, her ally. Although Benny was a loss that felt insurmountable, it became clear to me that the threads of my connection with Mia were worth rekindling. We were two broken souls, each with pieces of the puzzle that could help heal the other. The thought settled in my heart and danced there. Hope was not an end, but a beginning. Together, we could face the chaos, together we could mend the fragments, and maybe, just maybe, we could even share in the joy of new beginnings. So, I resolved to talk to her, to share how I felt and to listen to her side of this storm. It was a daunting prospect, the idea of peeling back layers that had grown thick with silence and misunderstanding. But as I took a breath, I felt that flicker of hope turn into something steadier, a flame kindling in the gentle dark, illuminating the possibility of healing together. I closed my journal and took a moment to center myself. Tomorrow would be a new day, a new chance. Somehow, it felt like the dawn of something beautiful and fragile. I could almost hear Benny's playful bark echoing in my mind, urging me forward with love, reminding me that life's greatest journeys often begin by simply opening our hearts to one another. I woke up the next morning with a newfound sense of purpose. The sunlight streamed through my window, breaking the darkness of the past few days. It felt as if a warm embrace was wrapping around me, whispering promises of change. I made my way to the kitchen, the aroma of brewing coffee filling the air, and I could feel my heart beating a little more steadily, a signal that maybe I was ready to face the music. As I sipped my coffee, I thought about the conversation I was about to have with my sister. I wanted to approach it differently this time. Instead of focusing on the betrayal, I wanted to hear her feelings, her fears. Maybe, underneath the layers of confusion and hurt, I could connect with her again. That flicker of hope I felt last night began to expand, morphing into a sense of resolution. I found her sitting on the couch, her gaze directed at her phone, the early morning light casting a soft glow around her. For a moment, I hesitated, concocting all these silent judgments in my mind about her choices, but then I remembered why I was here. "Can we talk?" I said, my voice steady yet gentle, the words easing out like a bomb rather than a weapon. She looked up, surprise splashed across her face, quickly followed by a hesitant nod. As we started talking, I made it clear I wasn't here to blame, but to understand. I shared how much Benny meant to me, how the empty space left behind by his absence felt cavernous and overwhelming. In turn, she opened up about her own fears, about feeling alone and desperate to find companionship. It was refreshing. It was raw. At that moment, something shifted, an understanding where there had been only hurt. I could see in her eyes that my pain mattered, and in turn, she allowed me to glimpse her own struggles. It was like stripping away the paint off a canvas that had become cluttered with misunderstandings and miscommunications. The purity of our sisterhood began to emerge once more, softening the edges of our conflicting emotions. Once we finished talking, I felt lighter, almost hairy. We didn't have all the answers, and I still didn't have Benny back. But we agreed to work on rebuilding, to let the cracks heal together. I realized that family isn't just about the good moments, but how we mend what's broken and nurture each other through the storms. I chose to forgive, not for her, but for me, to release the heaviness I'd been carrying. As I went about my day, I could feel a sense of calm washing over me, a gentle reminder whispered by the universe that life is a tapestry woven with threads of both joy and sorrow. In that quiet resolution, I embraced the possibility of new beginnings, not just for myself, but for us both. As the weeks passed, those threads of understanding began to weave themselves into the fabric of our everyday lives. My sister and I started to carve out small moments together, making dinner, binge-watching old shows, or simply sipping tea in the garden while the world hummed softly around us. Each shared laugh, even in the midst of our lingering sadness, felt like a thread being tied, slowly but surely, in a way that felt warmer and more resilient. With each passing day, the sharp ache of Benny's absence softened, replaced by a bittersweet longing that reminded me how deeply I still loved him. I channeled that love into a daily ritual. Each evening, I would step outside under the twilight sky, just as Benny and I used to do, imagining his joyous sparks echoing in the soft rustle of leaves, feeling him running beside me in spirit. Then came a moment, unexpected yet gentle, as if the universe had conspired to bring hope back into our lives. One morning, I woke to find a message from my sister, illuminating the dawn with possibility. She had been searching for a new furry friend for both of us, shaping our days not in replacement, but in healing. That afternoon, we visited a local shelter. A little bundle of energy with the brightest eyes and a wagging tail chose us in an instant. We named her Luna, after the light she seemed to shine. It felt surreal. Bringing her home filled our hearts with warmth, igniting a spark of joy that had been dormant for too long. Together, we navigated the early days of puppyhood, sharing the chaos and laughter that came with every tiny mischief and clumsy frolic. There were moments of sadness too, of course. I often reflected on Benny, making space for those memories and embracing the love that would forever bind us. My sister and I would share those stories, entwining them with new memories, allowing our hearts to grow rather than narrow with loss. Ultimately, what I learned throughout this journey was about the transformative power of forgiveness and love, how kindness could emerge from the cracks in our sisterhood. Luna's playful spirit became a balm for our wounds, teaching us that healing takes time but is far more beautiful when shared. And as we curled up on the couch each evening, my sister, Luna, and I, there was an unspoken agreement between us, to keep moving forward, to honor the past, and to hold tightly to the bonds that had tethered us all along. In that quiet understanding, we found a renewed sense of home. A sacred space carved out of tenderness and resolve, a reminder that while some chapters may close, others are just waiting to be written anew under the warm glow of family, love, and unbreakable ties. Sometimes, it's in the smallest moments of love that we discover the strength to mend what was broken. And as the stars twinkled outside, a gentle reminder lingered in the air: healing begins when we choose to meet each other with open hearts. You know how some moments in life cling to you, like a light summer rain that whispers memories long after you think the storm has passed? That's how I feel about the trip that almost got away from me. It's late now, and I'm tucked into bed, the soft glow of my bedside lamp casting a warm halo over the pages of my journal. I can hear the gentle rustle of leaves against my window, a reminder of the world outside and all its whispered secrets. My friends, at least, I thought they were my friends, were planning a weekend getaway to the coast. Bright sun, salty air, the kind of place where laughter hangs in the air as thick as the scent of sunscreen. We've spent countless evenings together, swapping stories under the glow of fairy lights strung in my backyard, feeling that electric connection that binds us all together. But when the invitations went out, mine was conspicuously absent. The organizer, Sarah, who always lit up the room with her infectious energy and carried that glint of mischief in her eyes, had known just how much I'd been looking forward to it. We had shared countless cups of coffee that summer, pouring our dreams into the steam, but somehow, this time, I was left out. A small, sharp pang settled in my chest as I scrolled through the group chat. Names appeared like warm hug invitations, but my own felt like a ghost in the conversation. I tried to brush it off, ignoring the pang that echoed through me, but it was as if the universe decided to play a cruel joke. So here I was, lying in bed, the soothing rhythm of my breath battling against the flutter of anxiety in my stomach. Despite everything, disbelief turned to determination. I decided, quite impulsively, that I couldn't let this slip away. It wasn't just a trip, it was a chance to reclaim a piece of myself that felt hidden behind a veil of exclusion. The ocean called to me, its roar promising solace amidst the crashing waves. And on that peaceful night, as the moon each touched the world in silvery splendor, I found my resolve. I'd crash the trip. With the soft thud of my heart matching the gentle rhythm of the night, I could almost taste the anticipation in the air. Little did I know how the choice would shift the tides of not just the weekend, but of friendships that had felt so steadfast. The day of the trip arrived with the sun peeking through my curtains, painting my room in warm hues of golden optimism. I had spent the previous evening packing, trying to fight back the gnawing sense of loneliness that had settled in after learning I wasn't invited. It felt almost surreal, scrolling through the group chat where photos of everyone else's excitement buzzed with an energy I craved but felt so distant from. As I lay there, the first hint of the ocean breeze wafting through my window, I remembered the invitation from earlier that week, a casual flame against the backdrop of friendship. "Hey everyone, just wanted to confirm our beach trip this weekend. Can't wait to see you all." The glee vibrated through the chat, but for me, it was like reading someone else's diary. My heart sank deeper with each message. Laura, a dear friend since high school, hadn't even mentioned me. I could practically envision the group, sun-kissed laughter, shared snacks, and stories exchanged in the glow of firelight. I was a stranger in my own circle, lost somewhere between innocence and the hurt of being forgotten. As the morning slipped by, I tried to shake off the heartache. I poured myself my favorite coffee, hoping the familiar taste would comfort me. But it didn't help. Then, as I sat on my couch, half-heartedly scrolling through social media, I saw it, Laura's post. A vibrant snapshot of her and the others boarding a bus, smiles bright and carefree. Beneath it, the flood of comments buzzed like a hive, each one a reminder of how disconnected I felt. It was just a picture. Just a moment frozen in time. Yet somehow, it felt like a door had been closed, and I was left standing in the hallway. That's when it hit me. Maybe crashing the trip wasn't just about showing up, it was about reclaiming my place in the warmth of friendship that had always felt like home. As the sun continued to shine through my window, illuminating the swirling dust in the air, a different kind of light began to flicker within me. Would they be surprised? Would I be met with laughter, or perhaps the awkwardness my heart feared? With a shaky breath, I decided it was time to turn this minor heartbreak into a moment of bravery. I could feel the ocean calling again, a serenade that whispered promises of acceptance and joy. I reached for my phone, my heart racing with anticipation, ready to put my plan into action. This would be more than just a trip, it would be a rekindling of my spirit. And with that little spark of courage igniting within me, I set my intentions under the vastness of the sky, ready to reclaim a piece of my story that felt lost. As the week went by, the heaviness of being excluded settled quietly in my chest, like an uninvited guest refusing to leave. Every passing day felt like a delicate dance between trying to move on and clinging to the sting of rejection. I found myself thinking about the trip more than I wanted to admit. My friends would be laughing, sharing inside jokes, and capturing memories that I wasn't part of. I imagined their smiles and the warmth of their voices echoing in the bright, salty air. I felt a strange mixture of excitement and anxiety, like a butterfly nervously awaiting its first flight. I carried this dilemma with me in small ways. My conversations became slightly quieter, and the lines of my laughter started to blur. When my friend Jess asked about how I was feeling about the trip, I could hear my voice cracking as I replied, "Oh, I'm just busy." A small, insistent voice inside me pleaded to confess my true feelings, to share how much I longed to be a part of that bright, carefree adventure. But daily responsibilities kept me anchored, as I told myself it was just a weekend away. Just a group trip that, in the grand scheme of things, wouldn't really matter. Yet, every evening, after the sun dipped below the horizon and left a canvas of twilight outside my window, it became harder to pretend. I would curl up on my couch, feeling the buzz of my heart against the stillness around me. With a cup of chamomile in hand, I'd scroll through pictures from our last group outing, capturing snippets of laughter and joy. Each scroll felt like holding a beautiful treasure, something I had cherished but now was on the outside looking in. I had always been included, always a part of the laughter. And yet, somehow, I felt as though I had become a shadow slipping between the cracks. As the trip's departure day approached, I was filled with quiet resolve. I envisioned their surprised faces, a mix of confusion and delight, as I strolled casually into the adventure they thought I'd left behind. I imagined hugging Jess, the warmth of her greeting, and how it might wash over me like a wave, ready to carry my insecurities away. And yet, still, there was a lingering thought that tugged at me. Was this foolish? Would I be crashing something that had morphed into a routine beyond my reach? Would I be the odd piece in an intricate puzzle they'd designed without me? With every thought, my heart fluttered between hope and apprehension, caught in the ebb and flow of emotions. On the eve of their trip, I tossed and turned, the sheets tangling around my legs as I replayed every possible scenario in my mind. The uncanny silence of my apartment enveloped me like a gentle cloak, and I found solace in writing my thoughts down. Scribbling in my journal became a small ritual, a whisper to my soul reminding me of the beauty of spontaneity and the need for human connection. I wrote, "What is one small step into the unknown?" That small line became an echo in my mind, urging me to dissolve the boundaries I had placed around my heart. After all, wasn't it brave to seek out experiences that could nurture my spirit? To reclaim what felt lost, not just the trip, but friendship itself? With each word, I discovered clarity slowly brushing away doubts and fears. As I closed my journal with a sense of quiet determination blooming within, I felt a shift. The air felt lighter, the noise in my head dimming, and all that remained was the soft hum of possibility. I was ready, no longer bound by the weight of exclusion, and that was more than enough. As I lay in bed, the weight of the day melted away like ice on a warm summer afternoon. I had crashed the trip, yes, but what I found there went far beyond the thrill of spontaneity or the thrill of proving a point. What I uncovered was something deeper within myself, a thread of recognition I hadn't noticed before. You see, for so long, I had let insecurity cloud my vision. I had convinced myself that if I wasn't explicitly included, it was because I didn't fit the mold, whatever that mold was. But during that trip, amidst laughter and shared stories, I realized my worth wasn't defined by a musty group chat or an invitation lost in the shuffle. It dawned on me that my presence has its own value. It brings warmth, creates memories, and forges bonds, whether the invitation comes from a specific person or not. In those moments under the starry sky, with my friends embracing the unexpected, and me, an exhilarating part of it, I felt liberated from the confines of my own narratives. I began to reflect on the times I had hesitated reaching out, fearing rejection or misunderstanding. I realized now that connection requires risk, the kind of risk that opens the door to beautiful, unpredictable moments. It's the vulnerability to step forward, even when you worry about being turned away. Sure, I had initially felt a sting of exclusion, an unjustifiable hurt that rattled my self-esteem. But crashing that trip transformed that sting into a reminder: life is too short to wait for permission. I wanted to open my heart wider, to embrace life even when it felt intimidating. One small action, choosing to show up despite fear, had blossomed into profound insight. Lying there, I could almost hear the soft whisper of my own heart, urging me not just to seek out connection but to nurture the rich, intricate tapestry of relationships I already had. I wanted to invest in friendships rather than measuring my worth by an invitation list. And with that, I felt lighter, not just from the burdens of exclusion, but from the realization that I had the power to create spaces for connection, whether or not a phone pinged with an invite. So here I am, embracing the unknown with open arms. I'm ready to celebrate opportunities, cherish spontaneity, and fully immerse myself in the dance of life. The world felt wider, more inviting, and full of potential. And I emerged from this with a renewed sense of courage, not just to crash trips, but to crash into life and love it thoroughly. Tomorrow, I would reach out, take chances, and embrace the beautiful chaos of connection. The moment I stood there, feet planted on the edge of the trail as laughter echoed in the distance, I felt an unexpected wave of clarity wash over me. The sun dipped low, casting a soft golden hue across the horizon, as if the universe was wrapping me in a warm, reassuring hug. In that moment, I wasn't just a body intruding into someone else's plans, I was a soul choosing to step into my own story. I watched my so-called friends, a group of familiar faces, some smiling, some playfully shoving one another, unaware of the storm brewing inside me before. But there I was, an outsider peering into a world that I thought I craved. Yet, instead of bitterness, I felt an exhilarating rush of freedom. I realized that I could shape my experiences, that I held threads of connection waiting for me to weave them into my life tapestry. Slowly, I took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp mountain air tinged with wildflowers. The weight of exclusion began to lift, and with it came the understanding that I could build my own adventures, nurture my own connections. I recalled the laughter shared with my friend Mia, the spontaneous coffee dates with Jake, moments threaded together with warmth that had nothing to do with formal invites or social gatherings. As I reached for my phone to text Mia, something shifted within me. I didn't just want to crash an invitation, I wanted to create a space for joy that wasn't tied to anyone else's plans. "Let's have our own adventure," I typed, a smile breaking through my contemplative haze. And with that simple message sent into the ether, I felt a gentle release, like exhaling after a long day. Tomorrow would be a fresh canvas. I would paint it with spontaneity, perhaps start with brunch, followed by a hike, or even just a stroll through the bustling market. The people who truly valued me would be part of those moments. My heart swelled with the possibilities stretched out before me, each step forward seeming lighter than the last, filled with the promise of genuine connection. In that moment on the trail, amid the laughter and sunlight, I didn't just crash a trip, I also crashed through the invisible barriers of my own making. I was free, and that freedom felt like soaring through a sky that had always been waiting for my wings to spread. It was time to join the beautiful dance of life, fully and unapologetically, and for the first time, I could see how incredible that path could be. The trail led us deeper into the embrace of nature, with towering trees standing like sentinels, their leaves whispering secrets in the gentle breeze. Each step felt lighter, not just because of the fresh air, but because I was walking alongside friends who had welcomed me not just with kind smiles but with open hearts. As we hiked, we shared stories and laughter, the kind that echoed through the valley, filling the gaps that had felt so lonely just days before. When we reached the summit, the view unfolded before us like an artist's canvas, vibrant and alive. I felt a warmth wash over me, an acceptance I hadn't known I'd been yearning for. There were no lingering thoughts of exclusion or hurt, those feelings melted away in the brilliance of the moment. Instead, I felt the comfort of connection, a tapestry woven with shared experiences that were now mine, too. As the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, we gathered around, enjoying a simple picnic. Each bite of food tasted sweeter, not because of the flavors but because of the love surrounding us. I marveled at how something that felt so wrong initially could turn into a space where acceptance bloomed fiercely. I was grateful for my decision to join the trip, for in that act of spontaneity, I not only reclaimed my joy but discovered the strength that lay in vulnerability. Later, as the stars twinkled above us, we laid on the ground, talking about everything and nothing at all, our laughter mingling with the night air. In those intimate moments, I realized that sometimes, it's not just about being invited, it's about inviting oneself to the joy of life, to moments that may feel out of reach if we let others dictate our worth. As I headed home, exhaustion settled in, but it was a good kind, a reminder of a day fully lived. I held tightly to the lesson I had learned: life is crafted in the moments we choose to seize, in the companionship we forge, and the openness with which we embrace all we deserve. So, despite the silent hurt of being excluded initially, I found beauty in forging my own path. And while the trip may not have started as I had hoped, it ended with laughter, connection, and the lovely promise of tomorrow where I would continue to soar. In the end, I learned that sometimes the best invitations come from within, and it's often in those unexpected turns that we discover not only who we are but also how deeply connected we can be. Life's sweetest moments are often the ones we create for ourselves. As the gentle hum of the ceiling fan fills the quiet of my small bedroom, I find myself wrapped in a cocoon of soft blankets, the weight of the day gradually easing from my shoulders. The night is calm, save for the distant sounds of laughter and chatter from a few neighbors celebrating something unmentioned, their joy drifting to me like the scent of grilled food on a summer evening. It's funny how even through closed windows, you can feel the energy of the world outside, contrasting sharply with the stillness within. I'm Jake, a 20-something who often feels caught in the delicate balance between adulthood and the remnants of youth. My life is painted in the warm tones of sunny afternoons spent skateboarding with friends, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the crisp pages of my ever-growing book collection, and the comfort of Saturday evenings playing video games while the world beckons beyond the glow of my screen. But underneath the surface, there's a certain anxiety that lingers, like the constant echo of expectations from my hometown. You see, I come from a loving but complicated family. There's my mom, with her relentless enthusiasm for everything I do, who relieves my insecurities through encouragement, even when it sometimes feels like she doesn't quite see the man I'm trying to become. Just last week, She wrapped me in a tight embrace after learning I had won a vacation giveaway from one of those Instagram ads, and her eyes sparkled with a mix of pride and excitement. But beneath that sparkle, I felt an unspoken destination outlined in her hopeful gaze, a family trip, where the three of us would create memories that would last a lifetime. But here's where it gets a little murky. There's my girlfriend, Mia, whose laughter feels like sunshine breaking through the clouds on a gloomy afternoon. She radiates warmth, turning the smallest of moments, like sharing ice cream on a rainy day or watching the stars flicker to life, into something incredibly special. Our relationship blossomed in the chaotic corners of college life, where stolen moments between lectures ignited something beautiful and profound. As the prize money pinged happily in my Instagram notifications, a thought nestled into my mind, quiet yet insistent: what if I took Mia instead? I could feel the weight of that decision even then, wrapping around my heart like a warm embrace, but also somewhat heavy with the knowledge of the ripple it might create. I imagined the two of us exploring a quiet beach, sinking our toes into warm sand with the sun kissing our cheeks while leaving the noise of expectations behind. So, there I sat, dreaming between the strands of possible conflict and the soft glow of adventure. The urge to hold on to my newfound freedom nudged at me, sweet and seductive. Little did I know that this small decision would open the door to experiences I never saw coming, weaving threads of joy and resolve into the fabric of my relationships. As I prepare to share the details of that trip, I can't help but feel a flutter of nerves and excitement. It was my story waiting to unfold, with twists of love and discovery just waiting around the corner. The moment came softly, like the gentle tap of a raindrop against a window, but left a thunderous echo in my heart. It was just another ordinary afternoon when my mom accidentally blurted out the details about the family vacation she had been planning for us. It was something she had been hinting at for weeks, talking about how we should all reconnect, but deep down, I could sense her desire to orchestrate a perfect trip, a family experience that suited her expectations more than mine. We were having dinner, and the air was tinged with the aroma of homemade pasta and the familiar sound of my little brother's laughter echoing through the hall. That's when she revealed the surprise location, a lovely resort on the coast, somewhere she thought we all needed to escape to. But instead of feeling excited like everyone else at the table, my heart sank. The thought of being there, with all the usual dynamics of family and the additional pressure of keeping everyone pleased, felt stifling. It wasn't that I didn't love my family, but I had just discovered this part of myself in my relationship with Lucy, one where spontaneity fueled us, just us, together, without the weight of unresolved histories and familiar roles. As the conversation swirled around me, full of jokes and anticipation, I felt a soft tug on my heartstrings. The idea crept in as I listened, a playful whisper asking, what if I took Lucy instead? I could already picture the two of us wandering the beach, unburdened and adventurous, chasing sunsets while finding solace in the sound of crashing waves. It was intoxicating but so incredibly terrifying. What would my mom say? Would she be hurt? I watched my mom as she chatted away, the excitement in her eyes. She had dreams woven into this vacation, and here I was, daydreaming about something utterly different. But a quiet voice within me wouldn't let go of that thought, promising a different kind of joy, one that danced along the edges of bravery and honesty. I had won the opportunity for a vacation meant for family bonding, yet here I was, heart-chasing a beach daydream with the girl I loved. That tiny shift, that moment of realization, left me suspended in emotional conflict. I loved them all dearly, yet this yearning for freedom began to bloom, a soft rebellion against the familiar. It was a simple question of choice, but it weighed so much more than that. With each passing second, I felt the gravity of my decision pulling me in two different directions, setting the stage for a family vacation that would be unlike any I had imagined. As I stood in the cafeteria the next day, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in hand, I could hardly focus on anything but the choice I had made. My friends were laughing, tossing around light-hearted jokes, and even indulging in silly arguments about the best vacation destinations. But all I could think about was the moment I had pressed confirm on the booking for our beach getaway, my heart racing with excitement and an undeniable undercurrent of guilt. I found myself staring blankly at my lunch, the gooey peanut butter merging with the jelly in an inauspicious swirl, much like my thoughts. Was it selfish of me to take Sarah instead of my mom? Yes, there was that familial warmth at the idea of spending a few days with my mother, who always planned vacations meticulously, but the reality of those trips had become predictable, safety nets interwoven with routine. Yet with Sarah, everything felt fresh, charged with a thrilling unpredictability. Over the next few days, snippets of conversations with my mom only deepened my internal turmoil. I can't wait to plan our vacation. It feels like it's been forever since we spent time together, she said one evening over dinner, her eyes sparkling with the kind of enthusiasm that made my chest tighten. Each word echoed in my mind, the sharp pang of duty against the soft, siren call of desire. I could almost hear the conflict nearby, barely contained, a dissonance that vibrated within me. I tried to justify my choice with visions of sandy shores, sunsets painted in pinks and oranges, and the warmth of Sarah's hand in mine, but guilt held a firm grip on my heart. I often found myself lingering in the moments before sleep, flashing back to my mother's infectious laughter and her habit of weaving stories from our past adventures. Would this be the last time we had a chance to make memories like that together? Yet, as I walked through campus, I noticed the changing leaves, the way they whispered to each other in the crisp autumn breeze, much like my thoughts. Perhaps I could embrace this decision not as a rejection of my family, but as an invitation to create new memories, a way to weave Sarah into the tapestry of my life more deeply. Each day, I felt a little lighter, even as the guilt lingered like an old friend refusing to say goodbye. The culmination of these emotions crested one afternoon at a coffee shop where I met Sarah. We shared stories over steaming mugs, our laughter ringing out softly like the rustling leaves outside. As I sipped my drink, I could see into the future, mornings of sunlit beach walks, afternoons of exploring quaint seaside shops, and evenings laughing under stars. In that moment, surrounded by the chatter of other patrons and the inviting scent of roasted beans, I felt the knots in my chest begin to loosen. Maybe those days ahead wouldn't erase my bond with my mom, but rather enhance it. Maybe these moments with Sarah could coexist alongside those comforting family nights. As I reached for my phone to text my mom about the upcoming trip, it hit me, this vacation could actually be an opportunity to share my joy, my love for both Sarah and my family. I could still be the son they loved while allowing themselves to witness and support my new chapter. But even as these thoughts flooded in, I tucked the phone away resolutely. First, I had to step into my own summer night, one where I could dance freely between two loves, the one for my mother and the one for this beautiful girl whose laughter awakened something in me I didn't know was sleeping. That quiet rebellion was morphing into a gentle acceptance, one heartbeat at a time. As I sat back, letting the cool breeze weave through my open window, I realized how much the lines in my life had blurred lately, the ones between love and obligation, family and freedom. It's funny how a moment of indecision can unravel a tapestry of feelings, laying bare the knots I'd thought were all but unbreakable. Winning that little contest and planning a trip with Sarah felt like casting off chains I didn't even know were there. I'd spent so much time trying to please everyone, my mom, my friends, even society's expectations. Every yes that left my lips felt like another thread added to that intricate web, making it harder and harder to find my own voice. But now, as I envisioned the sunset over the ocean, the salty air mingling with laughter, I felt a spark of clarity. This trip wasn't just a vacation, it was a turning point. It struck me that allowing myself to embrace this relationship with Sarah didn't dilute my love for my mom, it enriched it. Why hadn't I seen that sooner? Maybe I had equated love with exclusivity, believing that to love one person meant I had to distance myself from another. But here I was, on the brink of a new chapter, and suddenly everything felt interconnected. Instead of having to choose, I could invite both loves into my life. I thought about the way Sarah makes me feel, how her laughter calls forth a kind of joy I hadn't felt in ages. She has this uncanny ability to see the beauty I tend to overlook. She fills silences with warmth, and now I saw how that energy could ripple outward. Perhaps my mom and Sarah could both be part of this evolving story of mine, a confluence of laughter and support, each bringing something beautiful to the table. In that moment of realization, I felt a weight lift. I was not abandoning my mom, I was carving out space for my heart to grow in ways it hadn't before. Each relationship doesn't have to be a partition, they could be a collage, a vibrant mosaic filled with shades of joy, connection, and understanding. As I took a deep breath, I could almost hear my mom's laughter in the distance, guiding me. I would share this new joy with her and let her see me blooming. I would draw her into this new adventure, embracing the reality that love is not a limited resource but an infinite expanse, growing, nourishing, multiplying when given the chance. So as I prepared for this trip, a blend of salty breezes and warm embraces, I felt a newfound assurance. I could celebrate this happiness without guilt. Tonight, I would sleep soundly, hoping for a morning filled with bright possibilities, where both my mother and my girlfriend could share in the adventure of my life. They both deserved a front row seat to my happiness, and for the first time, I felt ready to embrace that transition with open arms and an open heart. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of gold and lavender, I found myself sitting on my bedroom floor, surrounded by an assortment of beach towels and flip-flops. Every item felt like a piece of this new chapter, a testament to the joy bubbling inside me. I could almost hear my mom in the background, reminiscing about our past family vacations, her excitement filling the room. But tonight, that familiar swell of guilt didn't wash over me. Instead, I felt a gentle warmth in my chest. The realization settled like a soft blanket: it was okay to carve out a piece of happiness for myself, to share it with someone I deeply cared for. My girlfriend, she had been my rock, supporting me through my confusion phase as I navigated the mixed emotions of growing into this new version of me. We had both been patient with one another, learning that love doesn't have to compete, it can coexist, intertwined like the vines in the garden just outside my window. I realized I didn't need to keep apologizing for my joy. There was enough room in my heart for both my mom and my girlfriend, even if they were miles apart on this particular trip. It didn't mean I loved either of them less. Rather, it meant I was opening up to the possibility that love comes in many forms, and sometimes it needs to spread its wings a little before it can soar. Taking a deep breath, I stood up, allowing the soft evening glow to bathe me in its light. I started folding my beach towels neatly, each fold soothing my restless thoughts. As I placed the last one in my suitcase, I felt a weight lift. This vacation wasn't about dividing my love but rather celebrating the beautiful web of connections in my life. My mom and my girlfriend both deserved to see me happy, thriving on my own, and this trip was just a start. I took a moment to close my eyes, envisioning the ocean's rhythm as my constant companion, and for the first time in ages, I felt a serene clarity wash over me. It was okay to embrace my own happiness, without shadows, without second-guessing myself. The beach, the waves, the laughter ahead, they were all waiting for me, wrapped in the promise of tomorrow. I resolved, in that quiet moment, that I would step into this adventure wholeheartedly. No regrets. Just love blossoming broader than I'd ever dared to dream. As I climbed into bed that night, I could feel a gentle breeze swirling around me, a comforting reminder that, whether physically present or not, both my mom and my girlfriend would always be part of my journey, rooting for me wherever I went. And that knowledge? It felt like freedom, like breathing in fresh sea air for the first time. The next morning, as the sun stretched its golden rays across the horizon, I found myself standing at the edge of the beach, toes buried in the warm sand and heart alive with anticipation. It felt surreal, like a page from a story I had long wished to write. My girlfriend, Mia, stood beside me, her laughter mingling with the whispers of the waves, and in that moment, our bond solidified into something even more profound. Throughout the vacation, we wandered hand in hand along the shoreline, collecting seashells and sharing secrets with the salty breeze. I watched her eyes sparkle with joy as we tried new foods, twisted through local markets, and danced under a canopy of stars, laughter wrapping around us like a tender embrace. Each day unfolded like a beautifully crafted dream, one that promised laughter and adventure, a testament to the happiness I had long sought. But as heartwarming as the experiences were, some bittersweet echoes still tugged at my heart. I often thought of my mom. I could feel her presence in the stories we shared at sunset, her laughter was in the breeze, her wisdom in the choices we made. I knew she was proud, even if she wasn't physically there to witness every moment. It struck me how intertwined our lives were, a tapestry of past and present weaved through love and memory. By the end of our trip, I realized it wasn't just about choosing one experience over another, it was about embracing all that had shaped me. I had carved out my own space in the world, a sanctuary of joy that felt right. Back home, the familiar comforts and routines awaited, but something within me had shifted. I was renewed, transformed by the sea, the laughter, and the love that filled my days. Returning from the vacation, I found myself longing to share everything with my mom. I picked up the phone, nervously rehearsing my thoughts. When she answered, I could hear the warmth in her voice as I recounted tales of our adventures. My heart swelled as I described the golden sunsets and the way Mia's eyes lit up at every new discovery. And as I spoke, I felt a deep sense of gratitude bubbling within me. This journey had helped me connect with Mia in ways I never imagined, and it brought me closer to my mom, who loved me unconditionally, even from afar. We laughed together through the phone line, sharing our perspectives, and in a way, it felt like she had experienced the trip with me. That conversation lingered like a sweet melody in my mind, reminding me that love can transcend distance, filling the spaces where absence might have once left a void. Looking back, I recognize this vacation wasn't just an escape, it was a step towards embracing my own path. Yes, there were moments of bittersweet reflection, but I accepted them as part of the journey. I found the clarity to understand that love is multifaceted. It can lift you up, guide you in new directions, and still keep you rooted in the places that have shaped your heart. As I tucked myself into bed that night, I felt a comforting sense of peace. The sounds of the ocean drifted back into my mind like a gentle lullaby. I knew I was on the right path, one that would lead me to even more joy and connection. It was time to embrace the adventures still awaiting me, the chapters yet to be written, with Mia by my side and my mom cheering me on from the sidelines. In that fleeting moment of twilight, I understood that sometimes, choosing your own happiness doesn't mean leaving anyone behind, it means inviting them to celebrate your journey, too. Life is a beautiful tapestry, woven from the threads of love, independence, and memories yet to come. You know those nights when the world outside feels like a comforting blanket, wrapping you in silence, and all you hear is the gentle hum of your own thoughts? That's how it feels right now as I sit here, nestled in the corner of my living room. The soft glow of the lamp casts a warm light over the bookshelves that line the walls, filled with stories I've collected over the years, each spine a memory waiting to be shared. Outside, I can hear the distant serenade of crickets, a reminder that life moves on, even in the stillness of night. I'm Emily, a 30-something living in a modest 2-bedroom apartment. To many, it might seem small, but to me, it's a sanctuary. The scent of vanilla candles lingers in the air, mixing with the faint aroma of fresh coffee, a ritual I cherish each morning as I sip from my chipped but beloved mug. My cozy home has always been a place I've been proud to create, a labor of love filled with plants, soft fabrics, and little trinkets from my travels. It felt like my personal fortress, a space where I could let my guard down and simply breathe. But then there's Jake, my younger brother, who recently found himself in need of a place to land. Life had thrown him a few curveballs. So, with a heart that sometimes struggles to say no, I offered him my spare room. I thought it would be temporary, a helping hand until he got back on his feet. And, in theory, it was a decision made with love, fueled by memories of late-night talks and laughter-filled summers. But what I didn't foresee was how, in that simple act of kindness, the dynamics of our relationship would begin to shift. The familiar, laid-back rhythm of my home started to change. The laughter soon felt different, almost like a distant echo, overshadowed by Jake's newfound sense of entitlement that seemed to spring up as soon as he crossed the threshold. It's funny how swiftly things can spiral, isn't it? One moment, you're sharing secrets over takeout, and the next, you're left wondering if you've invited a stranger to live in your heart's haven. So, as I sit here, listening to the soft rustle of the night, I find myself reflecting on the delicate balance of family and personal space, questioning if it was worth it, or if love was meant to be expressed with a little more caution. Because in opening my door, I may have also opened a can of worms, or perhaps a perfect storm of brotherly dynamics that I hadn't anticipated. I hope you'll join me on this journey, as I sift through the laughter and the tension, in search of that shared bond that once felt unbreakable. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when the inciting moment found me, completely unprepared. I was just finishing up a long day at work, my head still buzzing with emails and deadlines, when I heard the unmistakable sound of my brother rummaging through the kitchen. The door had barely closed behind him before I could hear him muttering to himself, likely scanning the shelves for snacks. I remember walking in, a bit weary, and instinctively expecting to be met with a friendly smile or maybe even a joke about how I should hide my cinnamon rolls better. Instead, I found him deep in the pantry, a casual hand on the doorframe, as though he'd casually moved in. He glanced over at me, eyebrows raised, and said, "You really need to get some better snacks. This is all just sad." At that moment, the warmth I felt transformed into something more complicated. My heart sank just a little. I was tired, and his comment, while not completely out of character, cut at me in a way I didn't expect. After all, I had invited him here to help him through a tough time, some space for him to reset and recharge. But, instead of that familiar breeze of brotherly love, it felt as though he were taking ownership of a place that had always been my sanctuary. For a split second, I almost laughed it off. I reminded myself that it was just him being him, his usual sarcasm peeking through the clutter of the day. But then he began to rummage deeper, grumbling half-heartedly about how he could use a real refrigerator makeover. With each word, my mind swirled, grappling with the notion that perhaps this was not the simple brotherly bond I had imagined rekindling, but instead a shift in our relationship I hadn't anticipated. I stood there, feeling the weight of the moment, my safe space suddenly feeling a tad claustrophobic, marred by his potential ownership of it. Yet, I couldn't help but feel a stir of something warmer, too, a flicker of solidarity, perhaps. Isn't that the tapestry of family life? One moment, a shared joke, the next, the unease of boundaries being tested. So on that rainy Tuesday afternoon, I found myself questioning what it meant to be supportive and what it meant to maintain my own sense of home. I felt a peculiar mix of affection and frustration rise like the steam from the kettle I'd forgotten to turn off, a perfect storm brewing in the most unexpected of ways. Perhaps love, like family, isn't about making everything blissful. Sometimes it's about navigating the downpours together, no matter how chaotic. The days slid by quietly, like the slow drip of rainwater from my windowsill, each moment leaving behind a subtle shift in the air. What started as small encroachments on my space morphed slowly, almost imperceptibly, into something more, an uninvited layer of tension threading itself through our days. At first, it was a simple thing, a dish left soaking in the sink, a half-empty soda can casually abandoned on the coffee table. I shrugged it off and vacuumed the living room, trying to shake off that creeping unease. My mind wove a tapestry of thoughts during those mundane chores, each passing moment a brushstroke painting over my initial excitement. I murmured to myself, "He's new to this, we'll find a rhythm." But rhythm can easily tip into cacophony. The pattern began to deepen when I noticed how he started claiming space in ways I never expected. The couch became his throne, the remote, his scepter. I'd come home from work, tired and eager for a moment of comfort, only to discover he'd taken my favorite spot, wrapped in a cocoon of blankets, laughter spilling from the screen with an intoxicating warmth that felt both inviting and exclusive. "Oh, I thought you'd gone for the day," he called, blissfully ignorant of the subtle ache spreading through my chest. "Care to join?" As I sank into my own chair, distant and removed, a small voice weaved through my thoughts. This was my space first. I tried to shake it off, reminding myself that family means sharing, but a strange knot tightened in my stomach. Each evening felt less like homecoming and more like an awkward visit, teetering on the edge of a polite smile. By the end of that week, I found myself slipping into the solace of solitude more often. When he'd step into the kitchen to rustle up something adventurous for dinner, I'd excuse myself to the balcony, cradling a mug of chamomile tea, my one personal retreat. I found comfort in the chatter of the wind through the trees, the way it danced like a gentle reminder that I still had my own whispers in this shared life. What if you just sat with him? I'd ask myself, the question hanging in the air as I watched shadows from the sunset bathe my palms in gold. What would happen if you reached out? Yet I hesitated, feeling a curious heaviness instead of the buoyancy I once felt. Each laugh echoing from the kitchen heightened that strange disconnect between us, like two players missing the rhythm of an old song. I found reflections of our relationship swirling within my own head, where I tossed around the clutter of affections mixed with irritation, trying to strike the right balance. The weekends arrived far too quickly, beckoning with the shimmering brightness of lazy days. I'd planned for a cozy Saturday, a morning ritual of coffee and quiet reading, but he had other plans. "Let's throw a little barbecue," he declared, bright eyes radiating excitement. Before I even had a chance to register, he'd whipped up a guest list, spreading his anchor further into my territory. I felt an unexpected surge of anxiety, an uninvited guest at my own gathering. At that moment, standing in my kitchen while he juggled a plate of marinated chicken, I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the window, a tense pose creased across my brow. The laughter of my friends filled the air just outside, a gentle reminder of the warmth I once cherished, now overshadowed by a swell of unease. "You'll regret this," my mind warned. "You'll lose your space, your serenity." And yet, why was it so complicated? As I stared into my now familiar reflection, I wondered if there was a lesson here, the eternal give and take of understanding, the push and pull of loving someone while still grasping for your own peace. Perhaps in all this, the true challenge was weaving together our lives without losing the essence of mine. So, as the barbecue unfolded and laughter swirled around us, I took a deep breath, letting the hearty sense of summer fill my lungs, hoping that chaos could blend into something beautiful. As I glanced at my brother, fully engulfed in delight as he charred the chicken to perfection, I whispered to myself, maybe we can learn to coexist, to make room for each other. But in my heart, the question lingered, blooming quietly in the corners of my mind, would that be enough? As I sat there, reflecting on the chaotic yet oddly harmonious gathering, I began to realize something profound about myself. I've always prided myself on my independence, crafting my own space, my own rules. Every corner of my home was a carefully curated piece of me, a sanctuary built to shield my thoughts and dreams from the outside world. But here was my brother, unafraid to fill that space with his laughter and bold personality, and it scared me a bit at first. His presence was a tumble of mixed feelings, annoyance, joy, frustration, and warmth, all rolled into one. But somewhere between flipping burgers and scanning the sky for the first inklings of twilight, I started seeing things through a new lens. Perhaps I hadn't just let him move in, I had opened a door. And yes, doors can lead to loud conversations, shared meals, and sometimes messy disagreements, but they can also open to beautiful moments I never knew I was missing. It's like I've been living in a monochrome world, dutifully coloring within the lines, and now my brother was splattering vibrant paint across the canvas of my life. His brashness and boldness, which once felt overwhelming, now began to feel like a challenge to me. What if I leaned into this discomfort? What if embracing his messiness could bring rich layers to my own carefully painted life? It dawned on me that perhaps the real ownership in any relationship is not about claiming territory, but about the capacity to share both burden and joy. While I may have built the house, it was clear that family was what truly made it a home. As I watched him, joyfully engaged in our makeshift summer feast, I realized that love is rarely about convenience. It's a messy dance of negotiation, boundary setting, and yes, sometimes, a bit of compromise. I began to understand that balancing my need for space with his need for belonging is a delicate art, an art that could lead to discovering a version of myself that is both anchored and free. In that moment, I let go of my apprehension. It wasn't about whether he was taking over, but rather about what we could build together. I remembered, no one thrives in isolation. So, maybe this was exactly what I needed, a chance to learn how to coexist, to blend the different strokes of our personalities into something uniquely us. The question no longer felt daunting, instead, it shimmered with promise. Would it be enough? In time, I began to hope that together, we could find a way to enrich each other's lives, carving out a space where love, chaos, and laughter intertwined, creating something far more meaningful than I ever could have anticipated. The moment arrived quietly, like the gentle exhale after a long day. I was sitting on the couch, its cushions slightly indented from our shared moments, those evenings we'd spent binge-watching our favorite shows and debating over the best movie villains. The air held a hint of popcorn and old memories, a mix that always felt warm and comforting. It was then, while absent-mindedly flipping through a book, that I suddenly noticed the little things around me, the artwork on the walls we'd picked out together, the mismatched cushions that somehow complemented each other, and the familiar comfort of being home. As I looked up, I saw my brother in the kitchen, rummaging through the fridge, his laughter spilling out as he joked about being the new head chef. Instead of feeling annoyed, I felt a flicker of something different, a sense of belonging. He didn't just act like he owned the place, he was breathing life into the spaces we'd once overlooked, filling our shared home with new memories. That's when clarity washed over me. I didn't have to relinquish control or push back against what felt like intrusion. Instead, I could invite him in, welcoming not only his presence but also the new vibrancy he brought along with him. It wasn't about ownership or boundaries, but about redefining what family meant, an extension of love, trust, and shared moments. I took a deep breath, feeling lighter. The decision crystallized within me. I would talk to him, openly and kindly, about how we could navigate this new chapter together. We could set some boundaries and find compromise without it feeling like a battle. I would remind him that this home was ours, a canvas yet to be painted with the rich hues of our lives intertwined. With that resolution nestled safely in my heart, I smiled, thinking of the cook-off we could have, our own chaotic version of a culinary showdown. Messy and joyful, full of laughter over spilled ingredients and friendly banter. This was my cue, a new beginning for us both. As I set my book down and walked to the kitchen, I felt like I was stepping into the light, ready to embrace whatever unfolded next. Outcome: the days following our conversation unfolded gently like the pages of a beloved book. It felt as though we were both holding our breath, waiting to see if the words we spoke would settle softly between us or echo uncomfortably in the corners of our shared space. As I approached my brother one evening with an idea for the cook-off, the tension melted away into laughter. We decided on themes. Taco Tuesday soon morphed into an all-out taco fiesta where we both donned ridiculous sombreros. Flour flew everywhere as tortillas transformed into the base for our culinary creations. I watched him step out of his self-imposed limits as he playfully debated guacamole recipes, creating a rhythm in the kitchen that felt like a dance. Each moment reminded me of our childhood, when we would build intricate fortresses out of blankets, each corner a shared secret. Setting boundaries became an act of creation rather than a confrontation. We agreed on times for quiet, understanding the need for personal space amidst our harmony. He learned to appreciate the little things, respecting the order of my book collection on the shelf or waiting for me before launching into their latest gaming obsession. In turn, I learned to embrace the commotion he brought, finding warmth in our chaotic kitchen and joy in the unexpected burst of his laughter. Weeks slipped by, and it became clearer that our home was indeed a canvas waiting to be painted anew. I believe what surprised us both was how our bond deepened through these adjustments. Our routine emerged as a comforting rhythm, a little dance of compromise and support. We took turns preparing dinner and planned weekly movie nights, often enjoying the simply woven fabric of our lives together, savoring those still moments shared over popcorn and jokes. And while he still had moments of forgetting the uncanny nature of living under someone's roof, it was now met with gentle reminders instead of frustration. "Hey, my book collection is not a jungle gym, buddy." I'd laugh, and he'd grin sheepishly, even offering to help reorganize it. We found a balance that felt just right. There were little twinges of bittersweet nostalgia when I recalled the days before he moved in, my island of solitude against his noisiness. But it was the laughter that lingered, the warmth of companionship I'd craved but didn't know. Our home had morphed into a sanctuary, a blend of personalities, and the once lonesome space now echoed with the richness of life's shared moments. In the quiet hours before bed, as we exchanged quirky anecdotes from our days, I found a deep sense of gratitude for this path we had wandered together. So, while my brother may have seemed to think he owned the place at times, in reality, we were simply co-curators of a beautiful, vibrant narrative. A story full of mishaps, laughter, and the kind of love that only deepens when shared in the everyday. Sometimes, that's the most precious thing we could ask for. In the end, I realized that sharing a space is so much more than just dividing rooms. It's about merging lives, teaching each other how to be a little more ourselves. After all, isn't it the beautiful mess of togetherness that truly makes a house feel like home? It was one of those quiet evenings, the kind where the world feels like it's wrapped in a cozy blanket, and the soft hum of crickets fills the air outside my window. My wedding day had slipped away into a delightful memory, but as I sat alone in my softly lit living room, the shadows of that day played on repeat in my mind like an old vinyl record, the kind that crackles with nostalgia. You see, weddings are supposed to be the happiest moments of our lives, aren't they? Surrounded by laughter, warmth, and love. And yet, I found myself wrestling with a knot of regret in my stomach that seemed to tighten with each passing hour. I'm Emily, 32, a little introverted, and a bit of a dreamer. I've always believed in the magic of moments, those fleeting glances, the quiet little things that often go unnoticed. When it came to my big day, however, the magic was slightly marred. My sister, Sophie, who is one of the brightest lights in my life, was meant to share a speech to capture the essence of our bond. We grew up sharing everything, secrets whispered in the dark, adventures on rainy days, and late-night talks that stretched into the early morning. But somewhere in the preparation for my wedding, the pressure of the day cast a shadow over our relationship. The soft fragrance of lilacs filled the air as I turned the wedding bouquet over in my hands, petals still damp from the early morning dew. On the surface, everything had gone perfectly. My husband, Jacob, wore that charming smile that first caught my attention years ago. The venue glimmered with fairy lights, and our family and friends danced joyfully under the stars. Yet, deep inside, I could feel an unease brewing. As the evening wore on and it came time for Sophie to speak, I could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. My heart ached to see her like that, and the weight of my decision outweighed all else. I made the choice, a split-second decision, really, to quietly lean over to Jacob and suggest we let the moment pass. I couldn't bear to watch her struggle, to see her joy slipping away. In that moment, I thought I was being protective. In hindsight, I wonder if I was just selfish. Now, lying under the gentle blanket of night, I replay that scene, over and over, questioning what I felt then and what it all means now. Was I wrong to cancel Sophie's moment? Or was I simply trying to shield someone I love from an uncomfortable truth? The flickering candlelight casts long shadows against the walls, whispering secrets I'm not sure I'm ready to face. The night had that beautiful, hushed quality that only comes right before something significant happens, like the world holding its breath in anticipation. Our wedding was a melding of laughter and joy, a tapestry of love that stretched across the faces of our friends and family. I had spent weeks planning every tiny detail, wanting everything to be perfect. But, as those links of excitement began to form, an unexpected twist caught the air thick with happiness and possibility. It started innocently enough. The venue sparkled under fairy lights, a breath of magic clothed in soft pastel colors. Guests mingled, glasses clinking, smiles brightening even the darkest corners. I could hardly contain my joy as I moved through the throng, soaking in the warmth of the day. But then, as I took a moment to catch my breath, I saw her. Sophie, my sister, stood at the edge of the room, her fingers anxiously twisting the delicate silver bracelet I had given her years ago. Her face was an intricate map of conflicting emotions, nostalgia, pride, and an undercurrent of fear that I couldn't ignore. I knew she had been practicing her speech for weeks, and with each passing second, it became clearer that the moment had caught her off guard. I felt the tightening of my chest. The thought of her stepping up to that microphone, beautiful in her anxiety, struck a chord deep within me. It was a reminder of our childhood, countless moments where I had watched her struggle with being the center of attention, her voice quivering where others sang with confidence. I wanted so deeply for her to shine, but here was this familiar shadow looming, the fear that sometimes, she would just retreat into the background. In that shimmering moment, I felt a protective urge surge through me. I envisioned a world where she was celebrated, where the stage was hers, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that tonight wasn't that night for her. It would be so easy to let it play out, but what if the spotlight only magnified her discomfort? What if the gentle warmth of celebration turned into a harsh reality she wasn't ready to face? My heart raced as I leaned over to Jacob, sensing the anticipation of the crowd growing heavier. "Maybe we should let it pass," I whispered, surprised at the way my voice sounded so determined, so certain. In that fragile heartbeat, I made my choice. And in that choice lay both the hope of protecting my sister and the bittersweet taste of remorse I'd carry with me long after the stars above began to twinkle goodbye. As the moment unfolded, a blanket of silence wrapped around me, a weight heavy with unspoken words and uncertain futures. And now, as night wraps me in its soft embrace, I can't help but wonder if I had taken a step towards love or turned my back on the very light I wished to illuminate in her. In the days that followed my wedding, life began to swirl around me like the confetti still strewn across our living room floor. Jacob, ever the steady anchor, would pick up bits of the aftermath with a gentle smile, unfazed by the remnants of my impulsive decision. I watched him brush the confetti into a dustpan, and I felt a bittersweet warmth wash over me. He didn't just see the mess, he saw the moments waiting to be made, the laughter hovering just out of reach, and the love threading its way through our new life together. But all I could think about was Sarah's face as I stood there, a wall between her and the words she had prepared. Each fleeting moment of stillness grew heavier in my heart. My mornings began with the aroma of strong coffee, but instead of comfort, it filled me with an ache I couldn't shake off. I would sit by the kitchen window, watching the world come alive outside. The sun spilled golden light across the grass, children twirled, their laughter bright, and I thought of how I had shushed someone I loved during the most important day of my life. Did those children even realize the weight of their joy? I stood alone within the transparency of the glass, separated from that light by a darkness I had created. Later that week, Sarah texted me. It was a simple message, "Let's meet for coffee?" The words filled me with a surge of longing, but also dread. I could already hear the unsaid things laced between each letter, the anxiety wrapped around them like vines choking the life from fresh blooms. Part of me wanted to embrace her with open arms, to whisper that I hadn't meant to hurt her, that I had only wanted to shield her from what I thought was an inevitable storm. But the other part, the one that felt the weight of my decision, feared facing the hurricane I had unleashed. As I approached the cafe that Friday afternoon, my heart beat out a rhythm of uncertainty. The bell chimed above the door, and I stepped into the cozy embrace of warm hues and quiet chatter. Sarah was already sitting at a corner table, fingers wrapped around a steaming cup, her gaze distant. I sat across from her and noticed her eyes. They looked tired, like they'd been carrying dreams and bedtime stories that hadn't arrived yet. "I've been thinking," she started, tracing the rim of her cup, "about how being the center of attention isn't always what it seems." Her voice was light but edged with a seriousness I couldn't ignore. Every word held the weight of 1,000 grievances unspoken. "What did you want to say that night?" I found myself asking, my own voice a whisper. "You know I didn't mean to cancel you." A shadow flickered across her face, but she held it together, framing her thoughts like an artist preparing for the canvas. "I wanted to say how proud I am of you. How our lives are intertwined, like the threads in a tapestry that keeps getting more beautiful with time. But instead, it feels like you wanted to protect me from something that wasn't truly happening." I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, shame washed over me like a tidal wave, dragging me down. "I just thought that you knew best," she finished for me, an understanding glint in her eyes. We paused, letting the silence cushion between us. My heart sank and rose in tandem with the gentle thump of the cafe's music, as if inviting us to rekindle our bond, yet reminding me of the fragile threads that now held us apart. After we talked, I left feeling both heavy and lighter. The air felt crisp, much like spring after a dense winter. But the reality remained, I owed her more than just apologies. I owed her a commitment to bring her back into the light, into our shared joy, our memories, and dreams, just as surely as she had always been there for me even in my shadows. That evening, As I prepared for bed, I hung a picture of us from our childhood on the wall above my bedside table. It was a snapshot of pure, unfiltered joy, our smiles practically bursting from the frame, calling to me, reminding me of the importance of lifting each other up. Maybe, just maybe, I had taken a step towards reconciliation, not just for my sister, but for myself, a gentle reminder etched into the fabric of love that exists even in the gray areas of life. And as I closed my eyes, I let the memories swirl around me, a soft lullaby of forgiveness echoing in the stillness. In the soft light of the evening, as I lay there, an unexpected weight lifted off my chest. The picture above me wasn't merely a reminder of who we once were, it felt like a promise of who we could still be. I realized that life often pulls us into a whirlwind of expectations and roles, especially during significant moments like a wedding. I had let that pressure seep into the cracks of our relationship, drowning out the laughter and connection we had built over the years. When I reflect on everything that had unfolded, I can't help but feel a touch of sadness, not just for what I had done but for the distance I allowed to grow between us. My sister deserved more than the mere absence of conflict. She deserved my attention, my love, and my unwavering support, just as I had always given her in the past. It struck me then how easily we can lose sight of those we cherish while trying to uphold our own visions of happiness. I realized, too, how caught up I had been in crafting the perfect day, wrapped in a bubble of my own joy that I failed to see the tapestry that was my sister's pain. The moment she stepped up to speak, I had been swimming in a cloud of my own insecurities and fear of judgment rather than stepping back and embracing the complexity of her emotions. We are woven together, after all, a patchwork of shared experiences, joys, and even heartbreaks. That understanding warmed me like a soft blanket. I had acted out of a defensive urge, wanting to protect the newfound bliss of my marriage. But in doing so, I had overlooked a fundamental truth: true joy expands, it doesn't contract. When we share it, it multiplies, it flourishes in the light of support and love. As I drifted deeper into thought, I recognized that my path wasn't just about my wedding or my happiness. It was about mending the invisible threads that connected me to my sister. I realized I had been so focused on my own story that I failed to ask her to be part of it, to help write the chapters ahead rather than relegating her to the background. Tomorrow, I would reach out to her, not just with apologies but with open arms and a genuine willingness to listen. I wanted to understand her heart, her fears, her own journey that intertwines with mine. It was time to embrace each other's narratives, to blend our colors rather than let them fade into the background. As sleep enveloped me, I wrapped my thoughts around this new realization, letting it cradle me into the night. There, amidst the memories and dreams, I found a soothing clarity. Perhaps I wasn't just working towards reconciling with my sister but uncovering a deeper version of myself. A version ready to embrace vulnerability not just within the walls of my own happiness, but in the acceptance of the journeys we all endure together. And that, I felt, would make both my wedding day and our sisterhood infinitely richer. In the soft glow of the dimmed lights filtering through my bedroom curtains, I felt a gentle weight lift from my shoulders. It was a calm kind of clarity, like fog rolling away to reveal a bright, open field. I settled into my bed, the cool sheets wrapping around me like a comforting embrace, as my mind wandered back to the moments leading up to that decision, the tension in the air, the worried glances shared between my friends, and, of course, my sister's hopeful smile as she rehearsed her speech. It had been so easy to focus on my own whirlwind of wedding preparations, the excitement pulling me in a million directions. But lying there, the stillness of the night carrying its quiet wisdom, I recognized something deeper. The words I had spoken in that moment, not just the ones I had canceled but the reasons behind them, had been born from love, both for myself and for my sister. I wasn't just trying to shield a perfect day from potential discomfort, I was bravely facing the discomfort head-on, reaching out to her with a desire to understand and to connect. In that moment of quiet reflection, I made a small but significant decision. I would reach out to her first thing in the morning, no grand gestures or elaborate apologies. Just a simple message, inviting her to chat, to express. I imagined her sitting across from me, maybe over coffee, hearts laid bare, and fears shared. It felt like a release, like finally taking a deep breath after holding it in for too long. I wanted to tell her that I see her, that her voice matters, and that the journey of sisterhood was as important as the vows I was about to make to someone else. As I relaxed further into the embrace of my sheets, I smiled to myself. I could let go of the narrative that our relationship was just the backdrop to my wedding day. It was vibrant, complex, and deeply intertwined, worthy of its own celebration. Tomorrow wouldn't just be about me, it would be about us, our shared love, and the beauty of coming together, even when the past was tangled. With that thought wrapping around me like a soft blanket, I drifted off to sleep, cradling the warmth of renewed hope in my heart. I wasn't just stepping into a new chapter of my life, I was inviting my sister to join me, together weaving our stories into an even richer tapestry. The next morning dawned with a gentle glow filtering through the curtains, and as I sipped my coffee, I felt a sense of tranquility settle over the house. My sister, still groggy from the late-night conversations we shared, shuffled into the kitchen. We exchanged sleepy smiles, and in that moment, I could see a flicker of something unspoken between us, an understanding that we were entering this new phase of life together, hand in hand. As the day unfolded, laughter filled every corner of the venue. Friends and family embraced the idea of us as two souls intertwined, not just as sisters but as partners in life's looping narrative. And then, as I stood at the altar, I felt my sister's presence beside me, radiating a sense of calm and connection that I had long yearned for. It wasn't just about saying adieu to my partner, it was an affirmation of the bonds within my family. In the speeches that followed the ceremony, my sister surprised everyone, including me. Instead of a formal address scripted with the usual wedding sentiments, she stepped up with a smile, her voice steady and freeing. She talked about our childhood, the moments that tested us, and the triumphs that had drawn us closer. Her words painted vivid pictures of shared dreams and silent struggles, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes as I witnessed not just a speech, but a testament to our sisterhood. Later, during the reception, I pulled her into a hug, our hearts beating in a synchronized rhythm. "You're my forever cheerleader," I whispered, and she laughed softly, the sound a melody of understanding and love. We recognized how far we had come from the hurt and misunderstandings, and it felt like a weight lifted, a bond renewed. As the evening wound down and the disco lights twinkled like stars, I caught myself reflecting on the day. More than just a celebration of love and commitment between two people, it became an acknowledgement of our shared history and growth. We had reshaped our narrative, we were no longer just defined by our differences but embraced by our shared resilience. In the days that followed, our conversations deepened. We leaned into vulnerability, sharing our hopes and fears. Each fond memory we revisited created bridges, mending the gaps that had once felt insurmountable. The road ahead wasn't just about moving on solo, but about moving forward together, supporting one another as we truly began to blossom into the women we had always aspired to be. So, was I wrong for canceling her speech? Not in the least. What blossomed from that moment was pure and beautiful, a celebration not just of love, but of sisterhood, understanding, and growth. I drifted to sleep that night, the weight of uncertainty fading into peace, knowing our paths were now beautifully intertwined, and together, we could face anything life threw our way. And as I listened to the soft rustle of the leaves outside my window, I realized that sometimes a step back is a leap forward. Life is not just about the events we plan but the connections we nurture. In the quiet of the night, I felt grateful for the unexpected wisdom that can emerge when we choose love over tradition. The sun had set, casting a gentle twilight glow across my little apartment, the kind that wraps around you like a warm hug. I could hear the distant hum of evening traffic mixed with the soft chatter of our neighbors, the familiar sounds that had become the soundtrack to my life. I leaned back against the soft cushions of my couch, cradling a steaming mug of chamomile tea in my hands, the delicate aroma swirling through the air, mixing with the faint scent of vanilla from a candle flickering on the coffee table. I had always been a sensitive soul, feeling things deeply, especially when it came to relationships. My world had revolved around a close-knit circle of friends, and at the heart of that circle was Mia, my best friend since college. We had shared countless memories, laughing until our stomachs hurt over late-night pizza, confiding in each other through heartbreaks and triumphs, and dreaming of a future sprinkled with adventures. Mia was the kind of person who lit up a room, her laughter bright and infectious, and I cherished the bond we had built over the years. But soon, that bond would be tested in a way I never saw coming. As I sat there, gazing out the window at the first twinkling stars appearing in the darkening sky, I took a deep breath and felt the familiar flutter of anxiety settle into my chest. My mind wandered to the wedding Mia had been planning with a giddy excitement. It was supposed to be a joyous celebration, a culmination of love and friendship, and yet, lurking in the back of my mind was an uneasy whisper. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. That whisper turned into a thunderous question when, a few short days later, I received an innocuous text from Mia that changed everything. "Hope you're excited for the wedding. I invited Dan, by the way." Just like that, my heart dropped. Dan, my ex, the one who left me with more questions than answers, the one I was still trying to heal from. Mia hadn't asked me if it was okay, hadn't mentioned it beforehand, and suddenly, This joyous occasion felt like a storm brewing just under the surface. As I wrapped my hands tighter around my mug, I felt the warmth seep into my skin, grounding me amidst the chaos of my emotions. How could my best friend invite someone who represented a chapter of my life I was still trying to close? How could she not see how this would affect me? The soft, familiar glow of the apartment felt a little less inviting now, the shadows stretching across the walls like doubts creeping into my mind. So, I found myself here, in the stillness of the night, ready to unravel the tangled threads of my heart, to reflect on a friendship that felt both precious and precarious, all amid a backdrop of wedding bells and uninvited memories. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, the kind that seemed made for celebration. I remember standing in my kitchen, the scent of lavender wafting softly through the open window, while I attempted to get my best friend Sarah's attention over the phone. She'd been planning her wedding for months, and I was excited to help her with the final details. I mean, isn't that what best friends are for? The sun trickled through the blinds, casting playful patterns on the floor as I put on my favorite playlist, tapping my foot to the rhythm. I could hear Sarah's voice through the line, cheerful and a bit giddy. The conversation flowed easily, as it always did. We talked about flowers, about seating arrangements, and about how she could sneak in my favorite dessert without her fruitcake-loving fiancé noticing. It all felt so beautiful and light. But then, in that bright and cheerful moment, she dropped a comment that felt like a heavy stone plummeting into a still pond. "Oh. By the way," she said, her voice suddenly tinged with excitement. "I invited Emily. You know, so she can help with the bouquet toss and everything." Panic coursed through me, like cold water in my veins. Emily. The name echoed in my mind, stirring up a whirlwind of emotions I had carefully tucked away. You see, Emily was my ex, a chapter that had felt both vibrant and tragic at the same time. We had shared dreams and laughter, but also heart-wrenching goodbyes and doubts that hung festively in the air long after the love had faded. I didn't expect the flush of heat that raced up my cheeks, nor did I anticipate the lump that formed in my throat as I wrestled to control my surprise. "Wait, what? You invited Emily?" There was a slight pause on the other end, a heartbeat of silence that expanded into a void. "Yeah, I thought you'd be okay with it," she said, no hint of hesitation in her voice. And at that moment, I understood that what I had brushed off as a simple inconvenience had shifted into something that felt more like a betrayal, like a secret she'd chosen to keep from me. My heart sank like a ship caught in a storm, rocking violently against the waves of confusion. I could almost hear the joyful sounds of her wedding plans crashing against the delicate shores of my emotions. I had thought our connection was unbreakable, that she would prioritize my feelings, especially considering the fragility of my own healing process. But here we were, tangled in uncharted waters, both joy and anguish entwined deeper than I wished to admit. So, as I stood alone in that sunlit kitchen, cradling the phone, I grasped for the words to bridge this unforeseen chasm. I felt a tightening in my chest, the comforting warmth of the mug still resting in my hands, asking me to ground myself again. Was I ready to see her? To pretend things were perfectly fine when, in reality, they felt anything but? I wanted to be happy for Sarah. But as shadows stretched in the corners of my heart, I realized I needed to confront these turbulent feelings before they spiraled out of control. The days that followed were a delicate dance of emotions, swirling like autumn leaves caught in a gentle breeze. I treasured those moments in the morning when the light streamed through the kitchen window, illuminating the little details I usually cherished, the way the sunlight glinted off the coffee pot, the rich aroma of the beans freshly ground, and the warmth of the first sip as it slid down my throat. Yet recently, these rituals began to taste different, tinged with a bittersweet heaviness, as if I had draped a sheer veil of melancholy over my routines. Each time I passed the invitation tucked away on my bookshelf, designed with delicate ivory lace and golden lettering, I felt an urge to tear it apart and put it far away from my sight. But instead, I left it there, a haunting reminder of things left unspoken. Would a simple tear release the weight I was carrying, or would it only fracture the fragile peace I'd held onto since the breakup? It was easy to slip into reveries of what might have been, dreaming of experiences we could have shared had time and choices aligned differently. In those moments of vulnerability, I couldn't shake the thought, was I really willing to watch my past unravel before me? As the wedding date drew nearer, I became acutely aware of every conversation around me. Friends would mention love and unions, the bliss of commitment, happy for them, truly. But each word was like a pebble cast into a still pond, rippling out to touch the edges of my thoughts. What lay at the heart of my grief wasn't simply an ex attending a wedding, it was the confirmation of my own unraveling. I wore a brave face, laughter bubbling up at appropriate times, But when I was alone, the weight of everything pressed heavily on my chest, leading to sleepless nights where quiet introspection became my only companion. Even my usual escape of evening walks through the neighborhood felt tinged with unease. I noticed the way the leaves were turning, the trees were slowly shedding their vibrant cloaks in preparation for winter, a heartbreaking beauty, the natural cycle of love and loss. I felt an odd kinship with those trees, aware that I, too, was in a state of shedding, struggling to let go of what was no longer there. The moon cast a soft glow on the sidewalks, illuminating my path as if to guide me toward acceptance. But each step felt heavy, laced with the reluctance to let go, to embrace new growth. In my mind, I wrestled with a stark reality: Sarah wasn't just moving forward, she was moving on, unashamedly supporting a future that included the remnants of my past. For perhaps the first time, I allowed myself to feel the sheer weight of betrayal mixed with heartbreak. I clung to the whispers of my heart, reminders that I was worthy of joy, too, that healing doesn't always mean forgetting. Each session with my therapist allowed me to sift through the layers of my soul, revealing forgiveness not only for Sarah but for myself. It was during those late-night conversations with myself that I slowly unraveled another profound truth: I didn't have to define my worth through broken relationships. I realized I could choose how much power I gave to those lingering memories. Yes, she'd invited my ex, but she hadn't invited despair. My journey would not be dictated by her actions, a revelation both freeing and daunting. As I prepared for the wedding, I chose to approach it not as a spectator haunted by the past, but as someone who was steadily piecing together a new identity, one that reflected hope rather than heartache. It wouldn't be easy, it would require patience and perhaps a bit of discomfort, but I could respond to this chapter in my life, rather than react to it. With the wedding date looming ahead, I found comfort in the prospect of forgiveness, both for Sarah and myself. In learning to embrace the bittersweet symphony of love and loss, I felt the first glimmers of peace nudging me forward, soft yet resilient, like the dawn that always follows the darkest night. As I stepped back from the whirlwind of emotions that had consumed me during this entire wedding saga, I found myself reflecting on the lessons I hadn't quite seen before. It felt like peeling back the layers of an onion, one tear-inducing layer at a time, and I realized how easy it was to be blinded by past hurt. I had clung tightly to the narrative that my worth was somehow tied to how my ex viewed our relationship, how others perceived it, and, especially, how I saw myself in the tangled web of it all. Slowly, something shifted in me. Attending the wedding became less about feeling bitter and more about rediscovering joy. I began to see that my perception of the past was like wearing tinted glasses. I couldn't help but equate Sarah's choice to invite my ex to mean that I was still somehow trapped in a place of longing and disappointment. But what if this wasn't about me at all? It was a moment in her life, hers to shape and celebrate, and I didn't need to let it dictate who I was becoming. I started to understand that letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means acceptance, which is a softer kind of strength, one that allows healing. I remembered moments in my life where I'd triumphed over loss, where I'd stepped bravely into the unknown, and each of those memories were building blocks of resilience. Embracing this wedding as an opportunity for closure felt liberating. I'm finding clarity in this journey, realizing that love isn't meant to be a possession or a competition. It's this vast and sometimes unpredictable force, not confined to the relationships we think define us. And right here, in this moment of reflection, I saw that true strength lies in how we rise after being pushed down. It lies in celebrating happiness for others, even if it feels bittersweet, and finding the grace within ourselves to move forward, fears and all. I left behind that version of myself that needed everything to be controlled, who felt threatened by the past rather than inspired to overcome it. My future awaited, unfurling like the petals of a flower, and I could either let the thorns of yesterday hold me back or embrace the beauty of new beginnings. It was here, amidst the soft glow of hope and the bittersweet acceptance of the life I was crafting, that I finally felt a sense of belonging to my own heart. As I drifted off to sleep that night, I wrapped myself in a blanket of resilience and love, no longer a spectator but a participant in my own journey, ready to embrace whatever came next with an open heart. The turning point came quietly, like the moment the sun peaks over the horizon, casting a gentle warmth across the cold morning. It was a few days after the wedding, and I was sitting at my cluttered kitchen table, a lukewarm cup of tea cradled in my hands. My eyes wandered out the window, watching leaves dance on the breeze, each one a reminder of the beauty of change. That's when it struck me, like a soft whisper in a crowded room. It wasn't just about my ex or the invite. It was about me, finally learning to let go of the weight I'd been carrying for so long. I thought about the anger that had bubbled up when I found out. How it clung to me, a bitter coat I was almost proud of wearing. But in that still moment, I began to question what I was holding on to and why. My heart ached, yes, but it didn't have to be heavy. I could choose to release it, to put down the burdens I had thought were mine to bear. I could see that my friend's wedding had been a celebration of love, love that didn't diminish my worth or my story. It was simply their happiness, separate from my pain. With that realization, an unexpected calm washed over me. It was like turning the page in a book I didn't think I was ready to read. I realized, I didn't need to see my ex to feel whole. My joy didn't hinge on the past, or the people in it, it resided within me. With a deep breath, I let the tension loosen in my shoulders. I sat up a little straighter in my chair, the sun spilling over my kitchen like a comforting embrace. This was my life, my journey. And the choice to celebrate life, to embrace joy despite its complexities, was mine alone. I could be happy for my friend, understanding that their love story didn't need to unravel mine. I not only felt the weight release, but I also felt lighter, freer, and oddly more connected to myself and the world around me. As the steam from my tea curled in the air, I smiled softly to myself. I'd taken a step away from worry and into acceptance, and it felt like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. I didn't need the past anymore, I was ready for the future. Each moment ahead, I could mold, explore, and fill with love, love for myself and for the bright days that lay ahead. As the days rolled past, I found myself enveloped in a sense of calm I hadn't anticipated. The wedding loomed closer, and while the initial sting of my ex's uninvited presence lingered, it gradually transformed into a mere whisper of discontent. I chose to focus on what truly mattered, my friend's happiness and the celebration of love that was about to unfold. The wedding day arrived like a gentle breath of fresh air. Dressed in soft hues of lavender, I felt somewhat like a wistful dreamer, suspended in a moment that was both significant and beautiful. Watching my friend glide gracefully down the aisle, enveloped in love and laughter, the weight of my earlier frustrations lifted again. When my ex walked in, it was as if time slowed for a heartbeat as I took in the sight. He looked different somehow, a stranger against the backdrop of joyous faces. But as I watched him approach the festivities, mingling with guests and laughing, a bittersweet realization washed over me. I recognized the past I had tethered myself to, yet there was no bitterness left to cling to. The ceremony was filled with warmth. The vows exchanged were sincere and tender, echoing the promises that I once thought defined my own journey. I concentrated on my friend, soaking in the joy that radiated like soft sunlight, illuminating the room. I laughed and danced freely, even sharing a moment with my ex. We spoke without pretenses, just two souls passing through, comfortable in our separate stories. By the end of the night, as stars twinkled above us, I could feel the threads of my past weaving gently into the tapestry of my present. Each laugh, every shared smile, it all affirmed that letting go didn't mean forgetting, it meant cherishing what was and welcoming what could be. I parted ways with my ex that evening with a simple nod, an acknowledgement of our shared history and the paths we now traveled separately. Walking away from the venue, I felt an exhilarating sense of freedom. I would no longer be a shadow of my past, I was stepping into my own light. Months following the wedding, I embraced life with open arms. I dove back into passions I had shelved away and nurtured friendships that deepened over shared experiences. My heart, it turned out, had a remarkable capacity to expand. I learned that love comes in many forms, not just romantic, but in friendships and self-acceptance. In my serene moments, I would think back to that day. The wedding wasn't just an event, it was a turning point, a reminder that life, with all its twists and turns, is a journey worth celebrating in all its manifestations. Every chapter unfolds uniquely, and with every breath, I found comfort in knowing that my story, too, was still being written. In the quiet moments, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I realized some ties are meant to fray, making room for new threads to weave into our lives. We are all the authors of our own narratives, crafting joy from the unexpected. And sometimes, the greatest love story is the one you write for yourself. It's funny how sometimes the quietest moments can echo the loudest in your heart. I've always been the kind of person who preferred the warmth of a small gathering over the chaos of a big party. I find comfort in the soft murmur of familiar voices, soft clinks of glasses, and the gentle hum of laughter weaving through the air. Tonight was supposed to be one of those nights, a cozy little work party to celebrate our little office's latest milestones. But as I sat surrounded by what should have felt like friends, I found myself feeling more like a ghost drifting through the walls of a place I used to belong. I remember arriving, the cool evening air wrapping around me like a gentle embrace. The office, the little brick building nestled at the end of a bustling street, had been lit up with twinkling fairy lights, giving it a warm, inviting glow. The scent of spiced cider wafted through the main room, mingling with the sound of chatter and the occasional pop of laughter, each fragment inviting me deeper into the crowd. I had spent the day crafting the perfect outfit, a soft sweater that felt like a hug, paired with my favorite jeans. I had even dared to style my hair, a rare moment of effort that I hoped would boost my confidence as I navigated all those excited faces. But as the night unfolded, I found myself standing on the periphery, the familiar swirl of conversations playing out around me like a scene I watched from afar. It was a motley crew, my colleagues, each with their quirks and charms. There was Sarah, whose infectious laugh punctuated the air, and Mark, ever the jokester, spinning tales that unraveled like the ribbons of colorful decorations hanging above us. In the midst of it all, I felt that familiar tension rise, the feeling of being part of a tapestry while somehow being separate from it too. Then came the moment that felt like a tiny, unexpected prick to my heart. As we toasted to our accomplishments, someone raised a glass and turned to me, eyes shining with enthusiasm, only to fumble over my name. You, they exclaimed, and in that instant, the vibrant air was suddenly thick with an uncomfortable silence. I could feel the heat creeping up my cheeks, a blush that spoke of awkwardness rather than warmth. The laughter swirled on around me, but instead of inclusion, I felt the sharp sting of exclusion pierce through the joy. It was a small thing, really. A moment that could have easily been forgotten. Yet somehow, in that sea of friendly faces, it felt monumental. As I stood there, watching the colors of the room blur into a spectrum of cheer, I realized that sometimes it's the smallest slips that unlock the biggest feelings of solitude. And so, with a soft sigh and a heart heavier than I had anticipated, I quietly made my way toward the exit, leaving behind the warm glow of connection that had started to feel achingly distant. My hand brushed against the frosted glass of the door, and in that fleeting moment, I hesitated. Inside, the laughter bubbled like a warm drink, but outside, the world stretched on endlessly. Just minutes earlier, I had joined my coworkers at the annual office party, a lively gathering meant to bring us all closer. The tables were draped in crisp white cloth, adorned with little bowls of pretzels and trays of cookies. The twinkling lights strung overhead cast a magical glow, and I really had wanted to be part of it all. I remember the moment vividly, the moment that felt so small yet weighed so much. A few colleagues were engaged in animated conversation. I had wandered over, a friendly smile in place, confident that I could navigate this social sea. And then it happened. One of my coworkers, Greg, happily exclaimed, "Wow, I'm so glad to see all your familiar faces." And a shout out to Malcolm. And Avery. And, there it was. The pause. The unintentional glance towards me, then away, as if my name had slipped free from his mind, lost in the rush of names and smiles. I could almost see it floating away, light as a feather, but heavy enough to bring the world to a sudden halt. It wasn't even the first time I'd felt eclipsed by someone else's oversight, but when that moment arrived, it stood in stark relief against the backdrop of laughter and warmth. In that silence enveloping me, the laughter became distant. I felt my cheeks heat up again, not from embarrassment this time but from the flush of rejection. I didn't want everyone to notice, so I stood still, a shadow in the sunlight. Just a long beat of time passed, and I realized that while I had taken steps to connect, I had also been left behind. A simple name forgotten, and yet it stirred something deep within me, a longing for acknowledgement, for a place where I felt seen. Instead of being pulled into the friendly chatter, I could only hear my own heart thumping louder, echoing in that gentle yet jarring silence. And so, feeling the weight of that moment pressing against my chest, I turned away from the gleeful clamor. I gracefully walked towards the door, my thoughts swirling in tandem with the vibrant chaos I left behind. There was a certain solace in the quiet of the hallway, a moment of reflection before stepping out into the cool evening air. I hadn't wanted to leave, not really, but the warmth of connection felt too far out of reach, and perhaps it was time for me to find my own way into the night. As I stepped outside, the cool breeze wrapped around me like a familiar blanket, soothing my lightly frayed edges. I took a deep breath, the air being a mixture of crisp autumn leaves and lingering laughter from within the office. I walked toward my car, each step acting like a gentle reminder. I had always wanted to be part of that buzz, a vital piece of this puzzle that kept evolving, even if it felt like a puzzle that was dismissively arranged without me. Over the following days, I noticed the little ways the experience nudged at me. I found it hard to shake off that night, like trying to brush away a loose thread that kept unraveling my sense of belonging. Each morning as I rolled into the office, I greeted the sun with a smile. My co-workers chimed back amiably, but somehow their words felt distant. I dove into my tasks, my fingers typing furiously to drown out that curious hollow feeling, yet it still lingered like a whisper in the back of my mind. I'd sit in the break room and watch their light-hearted moments from the sidelines, feeling like a ghost flickering in and out of view. The way they shared inside jokes and laughter made me smile, of course, yet there was always a thread of longing that pulled at my heart. Why had they forgotten my name? I pondered it again and again until the very act of thinking felt heavy, a dense fog settling in, turning the once vibrant office air into something more muted and gray. On a particularly rainy Wednesday, my usual coffee break was overtaken by a wave of self-doubt. I absent-mindedly stirred my steaming cup while staring at the raindrops sliding down the window. Maybe it wasn't just about my name. Maybe I was always an outsider, an uninvited guest in a party where everyone else already knew the dance. How easily I could get lost in a crowd but still not feel seen. That night, I sought comfort in the most mundane of routines. I put on my favorite playlist and wrapped myself in a cozy blanket, the melodies coaxing me back to a soft state of calm. I allowed myself to sink into those feelings, loneliness and yearning, as though they were just parts of me craving attention rather than enemies to banish. I reflected on how connection takes many forms, and perhaps my own way of belonging was yet to unfold. In the days that followed, something began to shift. Rather than trying to forge immediate connections, I found peace in small, quiet moments, sipping my coffee, watching the sunlight trace its way across the desk, and breathing in the atmosphere of the space. My co-workers engaged in their chats while I listened, absorbing their laughter. Oddly enough, I no longer felt as pressed to participate or be recognized. Instead, I embraced the view of my own inner landscape. I started sharing bits of humor with a couple of colleagues I felt slightly more comfortable with, small threads woven back into the fabric of camaraderie. Each chuckle or shared smile felt like depositing a coin into a meager jar, slowly but surely, building up again, creating a bit of intimacy through our fragmented routines. They didn't know how their kind responses were filling the cracks I hadn't realized were there before. I began investing more time in discovering what they loved, talking about weekend plans or favorite movies, shifting the focus from me back to the pleasant ebb and flow of conversation. As weeks drifted on, the initial sting softened. The moment of being forgotten had been a starting point, after all. It taught me to turn inward, to shape a space of warmth within myself before striving to find external validation. I started to appreciate the gentleness of solitude, a quiet corner from where to observe, to reflect, to grow. It was then that I realized it was never merely about the party, nor was it just about the name. It was an invitation to stretch out into the world, to explore my ideas of belonging and connection, inching my way back into the fabric of life one delicate thread at a time. As I sit here, reflecting on that office party and the way it unfolded, I find myself feeling a warm glow of understanding. For so long, I had tied my sense of worth to how others perceived me or, more specifically, how they remembered me. It's funny, really, how a fleeting moment can domino into a cascade of self-discovery. I thought that being acknowledged, being known, really known, was what made a person feel valued. But what I didn't recognize until later is that the validation I craved was always meant to come from within. Leaving the party felt like a sad whisper of defeat at first, but it opened the door to something beautifully transformative. In the silent aftermath, I learned to cherish the simplicity of my own company. I began savoring those moments alone, whether it was curling up with a book, journaling my thoughts, or simply sitting in a coffee shop and soaking up the world around me. Slowly, I realized that I didn't need to fill the spaces of my life with the constant noise of others' approval. Instead, I found joy in a quieter rhythm, where my thoughts could dance freely without the interruptions of outside judgment. I started to see my colleagues in a different light, too. I understood them better, beyond their masks of professionalism. They were just like me, wrapped up in their lives, facing their own uncertainties and struggles. The cavalcade of forgetfulness had unwittingly pushed me to explore empathy, to share warmth and kindness. I delighted in those simple exchanges, a smile here, a compliment there. It became a cycle of giving that nourished my spirit more than receiving validation ever had. As weeks turned into months, I began to reshape my own narrative. I learned that connecting isn't a one-way street bound by memory, it's a dance of vulnerability, of opening up and embracing shared experiences. I recognize that everyone walks around with their own elephants in their rooms, those moments of worry, insecurity, or forgotten names. It made me wonder if perhaps we're all just searching for ways to be seen, to feel valued for who we truly are. The world, I realized, is far bigger and more intricate than the tight confines of an office party. So here I am now, not defined by moments of forgetfulness, but by the rich tapestry of connections I'm weaving every day. I embrace the unpredictability of relationships, how they evolve, how people come and go, because each person adds a unique thread to my story. I hold my name with pride, but even more so, I cherish this newfound understanding of myself and others. Now, when I walk into a room, I do so with the intention of redistributing warmth, not just waiting for someone to call my name. And that acceptance, that beautiful, soft acceptance, feels like coming home. As I stood there, watching the crowd, a gentle wave of clarity washed over me. The chatter, the laughter, the clinking of glasses, all of it began to fade into a soothing hum. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the scent of mingling colognes and freshly poured drinks. It was then that I realized I had been holding on to something heavy, something that didn't really belong to me, a desperate need for recognition, for validation in this chaotic yet beautiful tapestry of human interaction. I let out a soft sigh, and all at once, it wasn't just about them forgetting my name. It became clear that this was about my own expectations standing between me and joy. Each time I felt overlooked, I had been handing over pieces of my self-worth, waiting for someone else to complete my narrative. But tonight, as the sound softened and my heart began to flutter with an unexpected freedom, I decided that wasn't how I wanted to tell my story anymore. In that moment of quiet realization, I felt a lightness seep into my chest. I gently let go of the need for each person in that room to remember my name. Instead, what if I let them see the real me, beyond the labels and titles? What if I actively chose to invest in others, to weave connection through kindness and warmth, regardless of recognition? I glanced around the room, no longer seeking eyes or names but rather the glimmers of life and people's smiles, each one a unique story, just like mine. I put one foot forward, then another, letting the rhythm of the evening guide me. I struck up a conversation with the lady at the punch bowl, her eyes lighting up as I asked about her favorite holiday traditions. Little by little, I could feel the warmth returning. In choosing to step into the moment and embrace whatever lay ahead, I released the weight of insecurity and stepped into the fullness of belonging. And as I did, I realized that sometimes, letting go is the most liberating decision of all. It's in that freedom that I found my name, my true self, written boldly in the connections I forge, not in the fleeting acknowledgments of a crowded room. Outcome: as I walked out of the office party that night, a quiet resolve settled within me. Yes, they had forgotten my name, but in doing so, they had unwittingly pushed me to remember my own. The laughter and spark of conversations continued to echo in my mind, a comforting melody, reminding me that I was indeed part of this tapestry, woven with threads of new friendships and shared stories. The next morning, I made a choice. I sat down at my desk and penned a note to everyone, light-hearted yet sincere, calling back to the party's playful energy. I thanked them for their company and shared a few anecdotes from the evening. I wrote about the lady at the punch bowl, her infectious laughter, and how she brightened my night with tales of family recipes. I wanted them to see the moments they may have missed, to understand that we're all searching for that connection, that spark. To my surprise, I received replies almost immediately. Some laughed with me, admitting they'd forgotten names in the bustle. Others were eager to share their own stories of misfit moments, bonding over our shared humanity. What had initially felt like exclusion transformed into an unexpected web of camaraderie. As the days passed, I found myself stepping into more conversations. I stopped waiting for someone to remind me I belonged. Instead, I made it happen. We gathered for lunch more often, and I began to know my coworkers not just by their titles but by their passions, their quirks, and even their fears. With each passing week, people began remembering my name, not just because they had to, but because they wanted to. Through what felt initially like a lonely experience, I learned that sometimes the quietest moments illuminate the loudest truths. I discovered that belonging isn't always a loud proclamation, it's often whispered in shared laughter and understanding smiles. And so, while that evening had begun with a tinge of embarrassment, it blossomed into something bittersweet yet beautiful. In the end, I left not with a sense of rejection but with a heart full of connections. I realized my name could not be forgotten in the hearts of those I chose to engage with. I went home that night with a lightness in my step, reveling in the comfort that sometimes, the stories we weave are more important than the names we carry. And in the gentle embrace of community, I finally found my name anew. As I settled into the calm of my quiet room, the weight of that night transformed into a gentle reminder, in a world that sometimes forgets our names, it's the connections we nurture that truly define us. After all, it's not the echoes of recognition that matter most, but the warmth of shared moments that linger long after we turn out the lights. It's late, and the soft glow of my bedside lamp casts a warm light across my room, illuminating the scattered books and the cozy blanket that burrows me in a little universe of solitude. I can hear the gentle hum of the night outside my window, punctuated by the faint rustle of leaves dancing to the whispers of a cool breeze. There's something calming about this hour, an invitation to reflect upon the day's events, to sift through memories like sifted sand, and find the treasures hiding beneath. I never imagined I'd be here, wrestling with my thoughts as I stare at the ceiling, my mind a chaotic whirl of feelings spilling into the stillness. My life had felt somewhat orderly until my ex, Jamie, reappeared out of the blue. It was as if the universe decided to circle back, reminding me of old chapters I thought had closed for good. He reached out, and I naively believed we could discuss the past like adults, without the tangled strings of emotions that once bound us so tightly. My friends warned me of the dangers, they echoed the same sentiment, don't go back, it never ends well. But I wanted to believe that some friendships could survive the embers of love. I forgot how easily those embers could reignite into flames. Our first dinner was awkward, yet familiar, with laughter spilling out between memories like sunlight breaking through old clouds. But by the time he asked if he could stay the night, all the clarity of my resolve began to evaporate. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as I searched for my answer. I felt a twinge of guilt, yearning to open my heart as wide as the night sky that surrounded us. But I knew deep down that letting him in again, physically and emotionally, could lead to a path I wasn't ready to tread. So, I said no. It was a small word, but it felt as heavy as a lead weight, the silence that followed almost unbearable. The look in his eyes shifted from surprise to disappointment, and my chest tightened with the weight of emotions. What I had thought was a straightforward decision morphed into a silent storm of repercussions, and suddenly, it seemed like I was the villain in this story, cast against my own will in a role I never wanted to play. As the night deepens, I can't help but wonder if I made the right choice. Maybe I'm not the bad guy, but it sure feels like I am. I find myself caught in a tangle of regret and resolve, soul-searching in the glow of soft lamplight, and realizing that setting boundaries can feel like breaking hearts, even if it's my own I'm trying to protect. It was a chilly evening, one of those nights where the air wraps around you like a gentle reminder of the world turning. I had just settled into my favorite spot on the couch, the blanket pulled snugly around me, ready for what I hoped would be a soothing night of tea and a good book. That evening warmth was quickly snuffed out when I received a text that changed everything. "Hey, could I crash at your place tonight? Just until morning." The familiar twinge of confusion stirred in my stomach as I stared at the screen. This wasn't just any text, it was from Jake, my ex. We had been broken up for a few months now, and while things had ended amicably enough, it had taken me a long time to find my footing again, to reclaim my space. I paused for a moment, feelings flooding back, nostalgia mixed with the clarity that came in the wake of separation. Despite the good memories, the idea of him being in my space again felt surreally out of place. I loved our time together, but I also loved the quiet solitude I had finally embraced. So, I typed out a response as gentle as I could muster. "Hey, Jake. I'm really sorry, but I'd rather not tonight." I hit send, watching as the little dots danced on my screen, waiting for his reply. Maybe I had expected him to understand, to gracefully bow out, but when the reply finally came, it felt like a weight thudding into my chest. Why not? It's just one night. We can catch up, remember how good it was? Part of me understood his longing, the echo of shared closeness that still lingered in the air between us. But another part, the part that had clawed through heartbreak, brushed aside those notions. This wasn't just one night, it was a boundary shaking hands with a past that still had the power to pull at my heartstrings. And then came the moment I would replay endlessly in my mind. "I really can't, Jake. I need my space. I've just finally started to feel like me again." The words hung between us like fragile glass, waiting to shatter. He took a moment to respond, and when he did, it felt like everything shifted. The disappointment laced into his words was palpable, a bittersweet reminder of what we had once shared. "You know, for someone who said they wanted to be friends, you sure know how to shut me out." My heart sank. I hadn't meant for it to sound like a rejection, I was protecting my newfound peace. And yet, as I stared at the screen, I felt that undeniable shift. The world outside my small apartment faded away as I processed the implications of my simple no. What had once felt like a protective shield now wrapped around me like a shroud, suffocating and heavy. I had drawn a line, and in doing so, I felt the space between us stretch into something much larger than physical distance. I spent the rest of that evening restless and agitated. I kicked off my shoes and paced around my living room, tossing thoughts back and forth in my mind like a ball that refused to settle. The stillness had turned oppressive, every tick of the clock echoing through the silence like a reminder of my choice. Am I a bad person? I whispered to myself, the words tumbling out as I sank onto my sofa. By the time the sun sank low on the horizon, painting the walls with warm hues of orange and soft whispers of pink, I felt the weight of regret overshadowing the firm resolve I had initially felt. I had navigated through the aftermath of our breakup, carving out a space to breathe and heal, but somehow, saying no had felt so wrong, as if I'd chipped away at the bridge we were trying to rebuild. It left me questioning the sincerity of my intention to remain friends, as if the mere act of setting a boundary now marked me as the adversary. As the days turned into a blur, the aftermath of that conversation tainted my daily rituals. My mornings, once sacred and serene, now felt like a canvas smeared with doubt. My coffee lost its comforting warmth and became an afterthought as I scrolled through my messages, searching for a hint of reconciliation that never arrived. Each ping that echoed through my phone was followed by a jolt of tension, not because of any new message, but because I realized I was still clinging to nostalgia like a fragile thread that could snap at any moment. Walking through the park and seeing couples wrapped up in their own worlds made my chest tighten uncomfortably. Memories of laughter and warmth surged forward, mingling with the bitter taste of loss. I inhaled the crisp air deeply, desperate to ground myself, but nothing could shake the gnawing feeling that maybe, just maybe, I had made a mistake. Perhaps he wouldn't have been so hurt if I'd just allowed him to stay. Watching people move together, I felt a flash of guilt and the shadows of my decisions loomed ever larger. As I returned home each evening, the light in my apartment felt more subdued, less inviting, as if it too mourned the space that felt increasingly empty. I would set my keys down with a heavy sigh, staring blankly across the room, haunted by the absence of his energy. It was a reminder of the intricate dance we had shared, and now I felt like I had stepped on his toes and shattered the rhythm we had struggled to maintain. I tried to rationalize my decision but found myself constantly second-guessing the strength it required. I wanted to stand firm, to embrace a new version of myself who knew her limits, yet the emotional turmoil wrapped around me like fog, clouding my vision. My inner dialogue spiraled, why can't I just let it be? It's just one night. And with that, an aching loneliness seeped in, gnawing at the edges of my heart where hope once bloomed. Life continued around me, my friends tried to pull me back into the light, inviting me out and coaxing smiles from my lips. But the shadows were always there, waiting to seep into conversations and hang heavy over laughter. I felt split, disconnected from both my past and my present, as if I were drifting just out of reach of something, someone, waiting patiently in the silence for me to decide, to choose. Every single day turned into a quiet battle, the echoes of his disappointed voice trailing behind me like a wandering spirit. I was a good person, wasn't I? I wanted to be. As each sunset marked the end of another day spent in contemplation, I found myself standing at the crossroads of what I thought was right and what felt achingly wrong. I was learning to navigate my newfound self, but the path felt littered with longing for understanding, a bond that lingered like a gentle caress and yet felt as fragile as glass. At first, I thought refusing him the comfort of my space, a fleeting act of self-preservation, was selfish. I wrestled with the impulse to be kind and accommodating, to give into a familiar rhythm that had once felt like home. But as I stood there, contemplating my decision, the warmth of the sun dipping below the horizon, something inside began to shift. I realized it was time to check in on my own needs, to reflect on the patterns I had been so accustomed to dancing around. In the days that followed, I allowed myself to sit with the discomfort of being labeled the bad guy. It stung more than I cared to admit, a reminder of how deeply intertwined I had become with his expectations. I would close my eyes and hear the echoes of our shared laughter, but alongside that warmth came the chill of all the moments I had stifled my own voice to accommodate his desires. As I contemplated my choice, it became clear, healthy boundaries aren't just about keeping the other person out, they're about creating a safe space for myself. I didn't want to be the martyr, pulling the weight of our past into my present. Instead, I wanted to honor the journey I was on, to acknowledge the progress I had made in reclaiming my identity. The more I reflected, the more liberated I felt from the remnants of our history together. It dawned on me how much I had allowed myself to fade into the background, to slip away from the vibrant life I was meant to lead. And so, I vowed to embrace the complexity that came with distance, to be unafraid of being seen as unkind, if it meant being kinder to myself. Sure, there would be criticism, but isn't growth often marred by discomfort? I reminded myself that sometimes, being compassionate means taking a step back, prioritizing my own emotional well-being, even when it felt like I was betraying the good memories we had created. As I lay down to sleep that night, I felt an unfamiliar but welcome lightness. The shadows still lingered, but they no longer suffocated me. They felt more like companions on a journey of discovery, reminders of where I'd been, rather than chains binding me to my past. Perhaps I was not the villain in a story of love gone wrong. Perhaps I was simply a protagonist learning to stand tall, to choose myself bravely. I closed my eyes, the weight of my boundaries settling gently in my heart, realizing then that sometimes the hardest choices lead us to the clearest reflections of who we are meant to be. As moonlight spilled through my window, I could hear the gentle whisper of the night, wrapping around me like a soft blanket. The world outside was still, but inside my heart, a quiet storm had begun to settle. It was in that serene moment, when the chaos of my thoughts distanced themselves, that the truth knocked gently at the door of my heart. I found myself replaying the long conversation we'd had before I made my decision, the way it felt both empowering and terrifying to say no. The way his face fell, that mix of disbelief and desperation, lingered in my mind. I had seen the hurt in his eyes, and yet, instead of drowning in guilt, I discovered a quiet bit of courage taking root. I suddenly remembered a time not so long ago when I had promised myself that my happiness mattered just as much. In the stillness, I envisioned my life as a garden. Each of us plants ourselves in soil that nurtures us, rooted deep or sometimes, uprooted and replanted somewhere new. I realized I had been clinging too tightly to a flower that had wilted long ago, mistaking its remnants of beauty for a reason to stay. With each passing day, I had watered its memory, forgetting that gardens need to be pruned and tended. Then, clarity washed over me. I began to embrace that lightness I felt. It was as if I could finally exhale after holding my breath for so long. Yes, maybe I wouldn't be the person he wanted me to be, but I was becoming who I needed to be. I thought of all the paths ahead, unfamiliar yet full of potential. Washing over me was a soothing realization. My worth was not dictated by others' feelings, it was inherent, buried deep. I nestled deeper into my dreams, letting the worries float away like clouds. It struck me that even if the world painted me as a bad guy, I knew that standing firm in my truth wasn't villainous, it was the act of self-love. I whispered to myself, sometimes, choosing you is the bravest thing you can do. And as I surrendered to sleep, I found peace in the notion that my heart was learning to bloom in ways I never expected. It was a conversation with my own soul, a promise to nurture my garden, no matter the judgment from others. And that felt remarkably freeing. The days that followed were a soft blend of clarity and quiet introspection. I faced the murmurs and whispers, not with defensiveness, but with a gentle resolve. Friends approached with caution, gauging my feelings, and I found myself sharing moments from my journey. With each conversation, the weight of their disapproval slowly lifted like morning mist, revealing a sunlit path ahead. I realized the importance of boundaries wasn't just a lesson for others, it was a pivotal chapter in my own story. Those who understood the heart behind my decision gravitated closer, offering support and shared experiences. It became apparent that sometimes, when you choose to meander away from what is comfortable, you stumble upon authentic connections that resonate with your spirit. Time softened the edges of the situation. I would occasionally hear from my ex, and while the exchanges were tinged with an awkwardness, they carried a different energy, one that signaled acceptance rather than animosity. I discovered that maintaining a respectful distance didn't have to equate to animosity, it was merely stepping into a phase that allowed both of us the space to heal and grow. Building on this newfound strength, I began investing time in pursuits that lit my soul aflame. Hiking in the crisp morning air, painting colors on canvases, and rekindling friendships reminded me that I was not just surviving, I was thriving. Each moment spent rediscovering my passions was a step away from the shadows of the past. Every so often, I still felt the sting of judgment from those who didn't fully grasp my choice. Yet, I learned to greet those feelings with compassion, both for myself and for them. Their reactions were woven into the fabric of their experiences, not mine to carry. I began embracing the notion that it was okay to be the bad guy in someone else's narrative as long as I was the hero in my own. As winter made way for spring, I felt a new blossom unfurl within me. I had forged a path shaped by resilience and a profound sense of self. It didn't matter if the world saw me in stark black and white, I was learning to paint my life in shades of vibrant color, dancing freely outside of the borders I once thought defined me. Ultimately, the bittersweet symphony of life continued to play. I stood firm, knowing that the act of choosing myself wasn't just a moment of bravery but a lifetime commitment to honor my own heart's desires. And so, I welcomed the flow of life with a heart open to all the possibilities, cherishing the freedom I found in vulnerability and the strength of standing alone. As I reflected on this journey, I realized that sometimes the most liberating thing we can do is to redefine our own story, refusing to fit into someone else's plot. In every ending, there is a new beginning, and within every choice, a whisper of hope. So, let us dance to the rhythm of our own hearts, knowing that it's the embrace of our own truth that leads us home.